can be live here. Sounds like the microphones are working. Okay, good evening, everyone. I hereby call the Tuesday, September 26th, 2023 Cumberland Town Council meeting to order. I will note that obviously it is a Tuesday and not our normal Monday. That was moved out of respect for Yom Kippur holiday yesterday, one of the high holidays in Judaism. So thank you everyone from town staff to council for being accommodating and being able to move that meeting. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. That is from the September 11th, 2023 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion on those motions or the minutes themselves? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, one abstention. Just because I wasn't here. So. Next on the agenda is manager's report. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few quick updates as we have a full agenda tonight. Paving on Main Street is going to be delayed until next year. That's primarily due to the curbing we're going to be putting around the cemetery that has not arrived yet. We expect that will probably take about 4 to 6 weeks to install, and the weight of those curbs and the machinery needed is just going to do additional damage to the pavement. So we'll wait until after that is installed to complete that section of sidewalk, as well as the final overlay on Main Street. The crosswalks will be restriped within 2 weeks. We are hoping it would be done with the final paving, but we'll do it as more or less just as temporary striping until next year. The project on Main Street, as you know, has been delayed because of the long lead time with the curbing, and unfortunately, that has pushed us into October, and we're expecting that any time for delivery. Town Hall will be closed this Thursday after 25 years. We're repaving the lot here, and it'll be difficult to maneuver around the equipment and not safe for residents as well as staff, so we'll be closed. The residents are still encouraged to, if they have an emergency, obviously call 911 or a non-emergency 829-6391, the police non-emergency number. If there's anything they need to get a hold of the police department, they obviously will be here. They'll be most likely staging out of the fire department and parking out front or on Stiles Way next to us and walking over. I had the privilege of attending the Eagle Scout ceremony last week for Andrew Bilodeau. If you remember, Andrew, my gosh, that kid is amazing. I built 6 kiosks for all the trailheads we have in Cumberland, and one actually in North Yarmouth as well. This continues a long line of Eagle Scouts in Troop 58 here in Cumberland, North Yarmouth, and very proud. It was a really big ceremony, a beautiful night out on overlooking Forest Lake, so his whole family was there, and it was a privilege to be there. John Jensenius and I both were there, and it was exciting to see him awarded this, extreme honor as an Eagle Scout. Finally, just to remind the council, October 25th at 6 p.m. at the Westcostigo Hall in North Yarmouth, we will be meeting with the school board and the Board of Selectmen for one of our annual meetings, and more information will be coming out as we get closer to that date. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is public discussion. Public discussion is for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Public discussion topics may be brought up again under new business for further council discussion. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the council on a topic that is not on the agenda? Okay. Oh, please, go ahead. If you don't mind just saying your name and where you live, that'd be
Sure,
great.
thank you. Scott Jordan, Cumberland. Mr. Chair, can I provide a couple of documents to the council?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So last week, in the school district weekly newsletter, or monthly, bi-weekly, I'm not sure which one it was, Superintendent Porter sent home the newsletter, and in this newsletter was the document you're looking at. However, that was also sent home to some students through random teachers. If you look at the document, I don't think that's appropriate for a first grader or a third grader to be bringing home to their parents. I was wondering if there's any particular counselor member that would like to speak on that publicly and answer. Do they feel that's appropriate for a first grader or a third grader to be bringing home to their parents? Sure.
My grandchildren brought this home, and I thought it should have been emailed or put in an envelope and not just so the students could read it. It does not warrant a first grader reading this, so that's just my opinion of it, so.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you agree that that's inappropriate for a first grader to be
I
saying
do,
and a
yes.
third grader?
Yep.
This just goes right in line with everything that's happening, folks, in our school district. You know, I could choose to, this is your 10-second content warning, folks, on camera and here in the crowd. I could choose.
Mr. Jordan,
Mr.
do
Jordan,
not
hold up, Mr.
put that
Jordan.
right down. Put that right down. That is inappropriate material for a
This is in
forum.
our schools, folks.
Mr. Jordan,
This is in our schools. This is in our schools.
Mr. Jordan,
This is
Mr.
in our
Jordan,
schools.
and you are
Put
now
that down.
sharing it publicly with everyone that has.
this is a
internet
forum
connection.
that is open to all people of all age groups. That is inappropriate material to bring to this forum. If you have a problem with that, I'll ask you to leave.
Can I have my time back? You just
No,
took- No,
no, you can't.
Mr. Counselor, he just
Do you
took my time.
understand what I just
He's just-
said?
I'm not, you're not the
It-
counselor, first,
excuse me.
the head chair,
It
sorry.
has now been paused. The time has now been restarted.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes and 10 seconds.
And Representative Council Vale, you set a precedent a month ago in a school board meeting where you got up and spoke 6 minutes. Then you tried to take my time away. And you were out of order because you were just a community member like these folks.
Scott, I would just ask that,
Let's give Mr. Jordan his time. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. This doesn't concern you as parents? Really? You think this is appropriate when the author of this book clearly stated it was for 18 plus? There's no freshman, no sophomore, no junior that is 18 years old. And you're okay with this? And you're telling me not to show it to our community? But our school says it's okay to have for our kids?
This is not the school.
I don't care. Our town manager stated he won't touch it. Our police chief stated he wouldn't touch it. It's pornography. It's 2 children engaging in oral sex with a strap-on dildo. And you're okay with that, but you don't want me to tell the community about it. It's inappropriate to tell our town council about it. Each one of you pay taxes to that school district. And this is our school district showing this to our children. And you don't want me to say anything about it. It's pretty interesting that our national media, 50 news organizations, have picked the story up. Each one of them, except one, have blurred the image out. The only one that didn't blur the image out was a State of Maine news source. Why is that? Why would national media blur it out, but our kids can look at it? Our children can look at this. Why are you bowing your head? You don't want to see something, but our children can look at this, Counselor?
I've read the book.
Okay, so you're okay with the author telling children to go to kink.com. And when you go to kink.com, and I do not advise anybody, a whole bunch of bondage websites pop up on your computer. And our children are recommended in the book to do that. Did you read that? Because I've got the book here, I can show you the page.
Please.
Anybody can answer that. You stated you read the book.
I did read the book.
Would you like me to show you the page?
No, I own the book.
You own it? Okay,
I've
so
got
you
it.
know it's
Yeah.
there, correct?
So what I will say is that I have spoken with the ed tech at the library, at the school library multiple times to understand who is able to check out the book and if there is a system of checks and balances in place. there is a system of checks and balances
I'd like to hear those.
in place. Sure, I'd be happy to tell you what my understanding is from that dialogue.
Okay.
So the library at the high school services students from the age of 13 all the way up to 19,
Correct.
right? When a student goes to check out a book, something like that, which does have material that could be considered possibly inappropriate, right? I hear you in terms of there are certain things that are appropriate for certain ages, absolutely. If the author of the book said that it's 18 plus, that's her opinion, right? The librarians and the ed techs do look at the student who's checking out the material, and there is a system of checks and balances in place and discussions that happen as to whether or not it's a good idea for that student to take out that book.
I'm glad you said that on the record, because you know what? Jeff Porter says otherwise. Jeff Porter has stated, and I have it in writing, in my pocket, the book has been checked out 8 times, 7 times by teachers. He stated it's not a wanted book by the students. So if the students do not want the book, clearly the parents don't want the book. Why does the book still remain? I know you can't answer that question because you're not the superintendent, nor are you the school board. We're told to do a book challenge, basically, challenge the book. This is what we're told as the community. The chair gets to select the committee. The chair gets to select the committee. Think about that for a second. We're in a day and age where we're not allowed to ask
Mr.
for
Jordan,
ban.
respectfully,
She took some.
well, we paused during that time period, and we have a lot of people tonight. And again, we are not the school board. We appreciate you coming, and you are welcome to come anytime
Can I have a 2-minute rebuttal?
after other people speak, of course.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else like to address the town council on a topic that's not on the agenda?
Hi, my name is Lisa Keithley. I would like to share with everyone here that I have a 3-year-old son who was taken from me by a family court judge with no parental rights hearing, no notice of a hearing, no substantial change in circumstance, no motion to modify, no subject matter jurisdiction, and never being adjudicated as an unfit parent, which are all required by law, by the Maine State Statute, Title 19A. I've addressed this with the court, and this case has been ignored for 10 years. My son has since suffered from multiple black eyes, infected wounds, broken bones, starvation, suffocation, flesh-eating bacteria, a vicious dog attack, infected tick bites, suffers from asthma, no medical care for any of this. He's had broken bones and unexplained multiple injuries. No court, the court has been notified with no intervention. The law has been notified with no intervention. CPS has been notified with no intervention. The legislation has been notified of my case with no intervention. I have my last motion filed asking for remedy was in August of 2020. The court has yet to respond. We are in 2023. Yesterday, I filed a protection from abuse order on behalf of my son, giving evidence that he has been forced into child labor for almost 5 years now. He's 13. He has been pulled out of school. He has been isolated from all loved ones. He has been terrorized by his abuser, who has sole custody of him. I have been cut off from all access to even records with no explanation whatsoever. There's no CPS involvement to begin with. There was no criminal record, and there was no mental disorder, so there was absolutely no reason, and no one could give me an explanation. There has been 20 judges on my case, and no one will relief of this. I have challenged the court with jurisdiction, and they have not proven jurisdiction. I filed a motion to vacate void. It has not been answered. This is a huge problem because this originated from Judge Joseph Field, who is well-known in the West Bath District Court and has a history of taking children that have all ended up in the Long Creek Juvenile Center and have suffered from abuse, neglect, and molestation. And many of those kids are now dead, if anyone wants to check the record. This is a huge problem. This is child trafficking. And the reason the book is still on the shelf is because now child trafficking is in our schools. That's exactly what's going on here. Where can my son and I turn for help? Where is the justice? Where is the law? Why is nobody intervening in this? How bad does it have to be? What do I need to get a protection from abuse order for my son? A death certificate? Because I have one of my first son. So that's my grievances that I would like to share and make everyone here aware of what's going on. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to address the council on a topic that's not on the agenda?
Larry Alfiero, Cumberland Center. Mr. Vail, you started yelling at Scott to put the drawing down. You asked him to put that drawing down, right? How would you feel if your son or daughter opened the book and looked at it, took it home, and was able to read it? Let me tell you, I read that book. That photo, that picture that he showed you is not as bad as the narration. The narration in the book lets a person who's reading the book feel like abstinence is abnormal and that hypersexualization is fun and exciting and hip. And if I'm not trying it, there's something wrong with me. This is bad. There's an organization called PET. They ban books. This book, Gender Queer, is the #1 banned book, 21, 22, and so far in 23. And we have it in our library. Wonderful. And once a child sees that photo or reads that book, they can never unsee it. They can't unsee it. And it begins, I can go into all the psychological ramifications of it, but it begins a cycle. And if we allow this to continue, it's a crime. So far, it's legal in this state. I can't understand why, but it is. We have to use our common sense. Now, I heard somebody say, well, we don't want to ban books. Ban books, okay. What if I told you that we have books in the library that explain how to become a good Nazi? Or stories about how children can take their pets in animal farms and torture them and not be detected? Or how about a book on the best way to commit suicide? Guess what? These books are banned because it's common sense.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? I believe we had a gentleman in the back. If you don't mind just stating your name and where you live.
I'm Mike Doyle. I live in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I had a knee replacement August 30th, so I'm still rehabbing and recouping from that. My lawsuit against Town of Cumberland and the school board and Sergeant LaChance, I think he is now, was bounced out of federal court on a technicality. I have to rewrite the complaint, which I'm going to do, and refile it or file for an amendment. So the lawsuit against this town for putting me into AFib at a town school board meeting, my pulse was 195 when the ambulance came. I spent 21 hours in the emergency ward, or emergency department at Maine Medical Center. They couldn't put me in a room because there wasn't any rooms available. I had upteen blood tests to the point where they couldn't use either arm anymore, and they turned this web of my thumb and finger into a brown color from the blood test. The bill was $11,860. I was in the custody of the police while I was standing there, sitting in a wheelchair, and the police officer was standing over me, or the county jail, one or the other. One of you guys, either the county jail or this town, is going to pay that $11,806. And I'm going to refile the paperwork to make sure it happens. I'd like to make one comment on the pornography. You know, pornography is outlawed all over the state. You can't show pornography to kids under 18, except in schools. You know, this is insanity. We have crazy people running our government now. We have crazy people making rules for the rest of us. Who has children in this room would like to have that brought to their house and discussed at their dinner table? How many people in this room go to church and would like to have that discussed at a Sunday school class? Folks, this stuff has got to stop. It's just too much. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a public comment for an item that's not on the agenda? Please.
Dave Noonan, Meadow Lane. I don't know what I walked into today. I walked in a little late, but feel like I'm in the twilight zone. I've never been to a town council meeting like this. My heart's racing a little bit just because I haven't read that book or anything like that, but I look at myself as a parent, and as a parent, I'm responsible for those things. I'm not worried about the school. The school can do whatever they want. That's why we have the school board and we vote and things like that. So something got brought like that in that book into my house, just from what you guys are saying, then I'd have a conversation about it. That's just plain and simple. Like, I'm very open, very, you know, I have 2 daughters. I have a 17, almost 18-year-old and a 8-year-old, and we have conversations in our house. So I think people want to bury those conversations and not talk about it and hope everything works out. So I just had to say my piece about have a conversation with your kids, have an open conversation, be honest with yourself, and just talk it out. Like, teach your kids. Don't neglect these topics because they're going to see them on the internet regardless of a book, whether it's in the library or not. They're going to see them on the internet. Almost every single kid, 10-year-olds have phones now, 8-year-olds, you know. Mine doesn't, but just got my daughter a phone like 2 years ago, my older daughter. But yeah, they're going to see it regardless. Internet, HBO Max, like I said, YouTube, all that stuff. They're going to see it out there. It's so just have a conversation, an intelligent conversation with your kids about that, and have open and honest dialogue around it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public to address the town council? Would you like a rebuttal, sir?
Can I speak to what he just said?
You can have 2 minutes as a rebuttal, sure.
It was good to hear that you speak to your children, but just 2 points about that. Not every parent does that. And I've spoken to my children many times, but when they're out in the street and with their friends, that's a whole new ballgame. They're not always out to please me, but they do want respect from their friends. The idea that if we are close to our children and we warn them about this material and say, well, you know what, you got to be careful, that's great. We have to do that. But I don't think that will solve the problem. And the other thing about, well, it's on the internet, it's here, it's there, it's everywhere. True. But do we sell marijuana gummies in our cafeteria? No. They can get marijuana anywhere. But we're not, in our school, going to advocate something like that or make it easier for them, are we? Just doesn't make sense. Please consider what we're talking about. And one last question. Who ultimately is responsible for putting these books in the library? Is it a committee? Is it the school council? Who is it?
I can tell you it's not the town council, so.
No one knows?
I can tell you it's not the town council, so I don't know. That question would need to be addressed with the school board.
Superintendent, librarian, a committee?
You would need to address that question with the school board, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I heard is that because it's a budget item, everything actually ultimately gets approved by the superintendent, that the librarians put in their orders, and then that's how it gets approved.
So the superintendent has makes the ultimate decision?
In theory, yes, but I don't think he spends time in reality going through each title and wondering if it's developmentally appropriate or age appropriate for the children in that group.
Mr. Jordan, would you like your rebuttal? Anyone else like to address the council on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, please, with your rebuttal, 2 minutes.
Just a point of reference, right here. Page 161 of the hard copy. Toward the SF Armory, which at the time housed the filming of studios of kink.com. Kids see that. Some might think it's funny, some might laugh and think it's cute. Some kids are gonna go there. You know, Mr. Chair, you did just say that ultimately it's not the town council's responsibility. You're right, and then some people laughed. This isn't a laughing matter. These are our kids, and I'm glad you're right. People should talk to their kids. And if they don't, ultimately that's up to them. But the school should not be talking to our kids about this.
Nope,
It's not the school's place.
that's not academics.
Thank you. Pender Macon, the head of the Department of Education in the state of Maine, stated clearly on the record, Google it, you can find it. Core academics will take a back seat to sexual identity, sexual orientation, gender identity, and race. How's somebody's sex gonna get them a job? A legal job. It's inappropriate. You're all parents. Everybody here is probably a parent or a grandparent. It's inappropriate. It's not right. Where's people's morals? He said this feels like the Twilight Zone. He's right. What used to be good is now bad. What used to be bad is now good. This is not right. We're coming to you, to your point, Counselor Story King, because the superintendent stated, and all you have to do is read the policy. I've read them ad nauseum. Ultimately, the superintendent is responsible. But to your point, Superintendent Porter doesn't read every book, but the librarian does, because the librarian is the one who put the book in there. She's admitted it, because she went to a conference where the kids stated they wanted it. But the kids aren't checking it out. Why do you think that is? I'm just asking for your help, because our superintendent won't do it. Our town manager said he wouldn't do it.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Your rebuttal time is up. Thank you. Okay, one final request. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to address the council on a topic not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move into legislation and policy. There is going to be a slight modification to the order of these items. We will move 23-104 and 23-105 up to the top because those should be hopefully relatively quick appointments. I'd first like to start with legislation item 23-104 to appoint Catherine Johnston as Finance Director for the town of Cumberland. If you don't mind, maybe just come up to the microphone if we can embarrass you a little bit and just introduce yourself and say hello.
Do you want me to put the clock on them, Katie?
Yeah, maybe the clock would be good.
10 seconds. Hi, I'm Catherine Johnston. I go by Katie. So happy to be here. I guess I have some big shoes to fill, so I'm looking forward to working with Bill. I've been working in municipal finance for almost 20 years now, so I'm looking forward to starting in Cumberland and working with Bill and all of you. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much and welcome to the town.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion on this?
Ron's got you.
A little bit of commentary before the motion.
Please.
I took the opportunity, or I'm sure all of us did, to read your resume, and I'm thankful I'm not applying for that job. I am very impressed with your depth of knowledge and your work skills, and I just can't say enough about what your qualifications are for. So I know everybody else agrees with me. Welcome to the town of Cumberland, and I'm sure you'll succeed here. So, having said that, I move to appoint Catherine Johnson as Finance Director.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion on that topic? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Welcome, yeah.
Welcome.
Now you can get home too. Okay, moving on, again, a little bit out of order here, but we are moving to 23-105 to appoint Jesse Lamar Vincent to the Lands and Conservation Commission. This came, Jesse, I don't know if you would like to get up and say anything, otherwise we know you well, and so, okay, looks like I'm getting the wave all good from the back. This started from Mike Schwent, who is the chair of the LCC, the Lands and Conservation Commission, wanting to ensure that every member of a subcommittee, which in this case is the new orchard subcommittee that's being formed, that every one of those subcommittee chairs also serve as a validated voting member of the commission, the Lands and Conservation Commission. So that's effectively what this is doing, is moving Jesse up the ranks to sit on the commission itself. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on that, Mr. Manager?
No, we're just very fortunate Jesse is here. I think it's going to be very exciting next spring when the orchard starts, and we're all looking forward to it. So Jesse, thank you for all your hard work and all the energy and excitement you're going to bring to the LCC.
I would agree, and I also think we have, yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, I could wax poetic about the Lands and Conservation Commission for all of the incredible work that they do. Jesse, in particular, is like a breath of fresh air. I've never seen such a self-starter, kind of getting up, getting this orchard running. He brings the energy, the research, and we are just so lucky to have you, Jesse. Can't wait to see this project unfold. So yeah, thanks. I'll give you a motion if you want one.
I would happily accept one.
All right. I move to appoint Jesse Lamar Vincent to the Lands and Conservation Commission.
Second.
Okay, we have
I have
a
a
motion,
question.
and we have a second, and now we have some discussion, please.
So I want to know what your strategy is for keeping the deer from eating all your trees. Can you please share with the public, because we all face
For those
this
at home, you're missing
Anyone who's
Jesse
ever
running
planted
to the
an apple
microphone.
tree. Pete.
So I do have a strategy. So we're going to put a bunch of remesh, concrete reinforcing wire cages around each of the trees. We could also fence the entire area, but I worked it out and it'd be like, I don't know, $6,000 or $7,000, which maybe someday, but we have a small grant to get this thing off the ground, and the remesh cages aren't that expensive to put, and
How high do they go?
they go 5 feet, so it basically lets the tree get tall enough that the deer won't nibble it, and then once the tree's branches are about 3 years in, you can take them off, and then the deer can snack on the lower branches, and its tree is tall enough to survive. But it's worked at my property. It works on a small scale. If we had more money, we'd just put up a big fence, but this is sort of the cheap and easy solution.
I'll be watching with interest.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jesse. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions, comments, or discussion on this? This is a public hearing as well. Anyone from the public have any comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Unanimous as well. Congratulations, Jesse. Thank you very much. Okay, now getting back into the order of things here, we will go to item 23-102, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on the recommendation of Goral Palmer Engineers to make the intersection of Tuttle and Middle Road a four-way stop. I will say that obviously this intersection is a intersection that's talked about frequently in town. There have been some serious accidents there. I know there have also been workshops over the last several months talking about the intersection, the types of crashes that are happening there, the number of the crashes, the severity of the crashes. And we do currently have a recommendation from the Maine Department of Transportation to put in a four-way stop at that location. That said, I know there were a lot of concerns from residents here, so this will be a public hearing. We will allow anybody who wants to get up and speak to talk about it. But I believe there's also been some discussions on the council with the town manager and others about trying to find maybe some middle ground there before jumping to a four-way stop. A lot of the discussion, and I will open this up to the council to discuss here, a lot of the discussion for the last several months has been not so much the number of crashes, but the severity of the crashes at that location. And the thought process being that, is there anything that we might be able to do as a town to potentially slow down traffic on Tuttle Road? Because it seems like a lot of these accidents are folks turning off from Middle Road onto Tuttle Road and just the high speed of folks coming on Tuttle Road. So the idea here is that maybe this is something we can table at this point. That's one of the options in the motions in the packet, and see if that we can make a request to the Department of Transportation to potentially lower the speed limit on Tuttle Road within 1,500 feet on each direction of that intersection from 35 down to 25, with the hope that that will slow drivers down. But with that kind of background introduction, I'd like to open it up to the council to see if anybody's got comments here, and members from the public as well. We will allow them to speak too. Comments from anyone? Any? Please, Mr. Bell.
I've been here long enough and had enough history that I remember the fatality at that intersection, and I actually knew the gentleman who was killed there. That was, I think, 35, 40 years ago, a while ago. Anyways, the input that we received from the public was a very definitive no, they weren't ready for a four-way intersection. And so, you know, we've this isn't the first time we've ignored our engineers or recommendations. And I think before we really consider the four-way stop, I think there's more work that can be done. There's opportunity for us to put additional signage up. I think that some of the intersections we've seen where there's a blinking light before you get to the intersections for warning people to slow down, a request to MDOT to lower the speed limit. I think there's some things that we can try before we do that. One of my concerns with the reconstruction of the bridge, that's really going to throw the traffic pattern into a tailspin for about 2 years project. So I think that it's appropriate for us to reach out to the engineers, MDOT, and look at some alternatives before we go to that four-way stop. So that would be my recommendation.
Councilor
If
Stork.
we ignore what the engineers have recommended, I would also advocate for a crosswalk and maybe even a crosswalk with a light to cross Tuttle Road, because we have a lot of people who walk and cross. I don't know how many, if you need to do 4 crosswalks, that would make sense, but I think there's not so much that you need 4, but it needs at least 1. People come down around that corner, and the way, if you walk in opposition to the traffic, the way you're supposed to walk, if that's even taught as a skill anymore, people coming off Tuttle onto Middle, cut that corner short and the pavement outside the stripe on that is a car width wide. We've parked there for parades and such, but, so I would strongly advocate for at least 1 crosswalk with crosswalk signs that say, stop for pedestrians.
Any other comments from the council? I guess if,
Bill, I just have one.
oh, please, go ahead.
Bill, can you expand upon the rebuilding of the bridge at any point? Like, would the reconstruction of it shift its location? Would we be considering increasing the speed back up? What would the impact be on that four-way stop, out of curiosity?
They would have to lower the speed limit as it approaches the four-way stop,
Okay.
but it would be just for a shorter section. The bridge is not scheduled to go out to bid until sometime in 2024.
Okay.
So most likely, construction would start in '25.
Okay.
So it's going to be several years. It looks like now it will be shifted to the north, basically toward Yarmouth.
Okay.
And they will always leave at least 1 lane open of the bridge. Originally, they were considering shutting the bridge down, which is impossible for us. We have nowhere to go. We would be shut off from the entire Forsyth if that happened. So they've reconsidered and said, yeah, we agree that that would be very difficult, a huge detour for us. Okay. So looks like 2025, they're going to do 1 lane at a time. I think it would be similar to the way the Bucknam Road Bridge is being constructed now. If you've been over it, they just opened the new section, so traffic is going over that part while they're constructing the other half of the bridge. So, and we've also asked for a sidewalk across that new bridge as well, and there'll be wider shoulders than there are today as well for bicyclists.
Okay. So the lower speed limit would potentially mitigate or be what we would be doing down the line?
Only if it was a four-way stop. I think the motion that you have before you is either go with the four-way stop or request the reduction in speed limit in both directions. That chart up on the screen right now is the chart that Randy Dutton, our engineer who's here tonight, presented to you on both cases. And as you see, the lower the speed limit, the lower the critical factors are in the accidents that happen. There's still accidents that will happen, but the severity will decrease with a decrease in speed limit. My recommendation would be to look at, even if we can't get DOT to put advisory speed limit signs up, just to get people, high caution, high crash accident ahead, high crash location ahead, try to get people's attention to slow down. Those could be yellow and black advisory signs and yellow speed limit signs as well, just to basically give people a word of caution. I mean, if we don't want to proceed with the four-way stop, that might be the next best thing until we can get that done. It'll take 6 months plus to get the speed limit reduced, if they will even reduce it. So at least this would start pretty quickly. We could get the advisory speed limit signs up probably within the next 3 weeks. And I could send in the request if the council wanted to go forward with that request. And then I know they've talked about the blinking red lights and stuff, but remember when you looked at those crash locations, the accidents that are happening for the majority are coming off the sides of Middle Road into Tuttle Road because people are thinking it's supposed to be a four-way stop. That's not the case. The idea of the crosswalks, we were in a lot of trouble with DOT with our crosswalks, and that's why you see them all being built to the right engineered standard now on Tuttle Road as well as on Main Street. We don't have technically sidewalks that these crosswalks are landing on, so they need to have what I'll call a safety island on all four corners if you do all four ways, which is fine. We can do that, but that really is going to have to be a budgetary item. Because you also need, when you land there, you have to have the truncated dome that basically designate you're coming onto a different surface. And the four of those will probably be close to $20,000 by the time they're installed. But that can be done if that's what you'd like to do. But if we're going to stripe that with crosswalks, we have to have the correct safety islands on all four corners if you wanted to do all four. I don't think 2 is a good idea. I think if you're going to do it, you got to do all 4.
Could you move it up Tuttle Road, similar to the way the one is up here that goes across to the Commons? That's not on a four-corner, that's just and
But-
like the one at Twin Brook. There's a crosswalk there as well. Could you move it up so it's not exactly at the four-way, but it's up toward the church, I don't know, 100 yards?
There would have to be some type of
Just to make a safer place for pedestrians to cross.
Right, but the only thing we'll have there is signage, and hopefully people will slow down. I know we've had a lot of complaints about people in crosswalks not being yielded to, and we've had some of those incidents, especially on Tuttle Road. So we put all the signs up at all the crosswalks we have. We would do the same at these crosswalks and look where the best places are. The placement of these crosswalks, if that's what the council wanted to do, would require some type of safety island. We can't get away from we can't do what we used to do. We can't stripe the crosswalk into a driveway or stripe it onto this shoulder. That's going to be prohibited. So we're going to have to do it the right way. And it takes a little bit more time and a little bit more effort, but we can do it. And it's not going to be too bad. I think if you looked at the ones we did up near Wilson School that went into the side streets, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It isn't a big deal, but it just...
There are a lot of pedestrians, there are a lot of people on Friar Lane that
Absolutely.
walk Tuttle Road, run. In fact, I saw Chris Steinen way up here on the sidewalk. He lives beside the Bailenson. And there are a lot of people on Middle Road who walk up around Friar Lane and home,
Right.
so.
I don't disagree. That's not a bad location.
Yeah.
I think with the amount of walkers we've had, I think it's increasing. And I think the safety those improvements will actually help slow the traffic down because it's going to look like something's coming up. And naturally, most people will slow down.
Okay.
Please, Mr. Cobb.
Just a question for the manager, Bill. Are there signs on Middle Road that say cross-traffic does not stop?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
On
I
both.
travel Tuttle Road all the
Yeah.
time. I hardly ever go Middle Road, so that's why I asked, so, good.
Yeah, and it's just confusing, I think, to people. I don't think it's clear. For some reason, I get it, but I know you're supposed to stop and wait.
Right.
But people that are unfamiliar with the area just don't.
And I agree with you 100%. I mean, I've towed most of these accidents, and every one of them has been Middle Road traffic that's just failing to stop. I mean,
Right.
and the last few were pretty severe. I mean, there was some personal injury, so.
And I think that's why DOT is recommending the four-way stop, because the severity of the accidents, I think Judge Goronitis at the last meeting had a really interesting number. He said, we've had 3 accidents out of over 1 million cars that have gone through that intersection, and that's true. It isn't really the number, but it's the severity. And if we can get people to just slow down a little bit, I think the severity of those accidents will drop, and I think that chart is fairly accurate, that, you know, there'll be fender benders, but we had an accident just there last week, again, 2 cars involved again, as you know, Ron.
Yeah.
But nobody was transported, fortunately, and I think more people are kind of being aware that this is a, you know, high crash location, so take some cautions, because people that are unfamiliar with the area are kind of just rolling through the stop sign and thinking that the guy coming around the corner from the Forsyth or coming down the hill is gonna stop, and they don't. So that's where we're at.
So with that, this is a public agenda item, as are all. So if there's anyone from the public who has a comment on this, again, there are kind of two motion options here before the council this evening. One is to move forward with the 4-way stop at the intersection, or the second option is really to move to table the action on a 4-way stop and request that the MDOT lower the speed limit on Tuttle Road within 1,500 feet on each direction at that intersection. Anyone from the public, please? Oh, it looks like we got a lot of hands popping up, please. If you don't mind just saying your name again, Mr. Noonan. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Dave Noonan, Meadow Lane. I had actually asked in the neighborhood meeting that happened, was there any studies that were done for the 2-way with the lighted stop, kind of the one that had all the jazz going on it? And they said, I believe they were going to gather that data, and is there going to be a presentation on that type of data as well?
So I can't speak to whether a study was actually conducted at this point. Do you know, Mr. Manager? And I know we've got our
Randy's
consultant.
here, he could answer that. I don't know. We didn't get any information on that, no.
Okay. We did not. I can, Mr. Dunton, would you mind jumping up and maybe trying to address that specific question?
Yeah, we checked, and there isn't a whole lot of information on that type of conversion, if you will, as to, you know, versus a 4-way stop, which is what they looked at. So unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of information to get.
Thank you very much.
And then just the other thing I was going to say is coming down the hill, is there an option to have like a lighted sign that flashes kind of 35, or if it goes lower, obviously?
Yeah, that's been talked about here on the council as well. I think one of the concepts here was, everyone, I think, I don't want to speak for anyone here, but I would imagine most of us would agree that if it's a 4-way stop, that will limit the number of severe accidents, right, if people are fully stopping. That said, we heard a lot of complaints from residents in the area. We also feel like a kind of an interim, well, I personally feel that an interim step is moving in the right direction, but maybe not going to the full level of a 4-way stop. And so that's something we're moving in the direction of trying to lessen the severity of those accidents with these potential changes. Anyone else from, please, sir, with the.
I'm Bob Knupp from Hawks Ridge. I am familiar very much with this intersection because I go over to Valhalla, and when I come back, I turn off of Greeley to the right and come up Middle Road. My experience has been that the major problem you have is the geography, or the topography rather, of that very severe, not perhaps severe, but noticeable hill that comes down past the Tuttle Church and drops down to that intersection. My experience has been that when you're sitting at Middle Road, making a left-hand turn onto Tuttle, you can't see all those cars coming down. It's just the way that the topography is that you are blocked visually from seeing those cars coming. And they come down a Helen. I mean, they really do. There's no, there's no incentive, it doesn't seem, for anybody to slow down for that intersection. And the problem you have is that you're there, you're looking to your right, trying to see what traffic is coming. You're looking at the bridge, you're looking at the people that are coming the other direction on Middle Road. And sometimes there's somebody who wants to make a left-hand turn in front of you. It's a mess. I mean, it's a very bad intersection. And I encourage you to take some action. I wrote down on my notes traffic circle, but I don't think there's enough geography or area to make a traffic circle. That would be a perfect solution, but this is a bad intersection. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please, sir, in the front here.
John Chandler. I live at 93 Tuttle Road, and I have property at 208 Middle Road, so I'm right in the middle of all this. And for the last 36 years, I've lived on Tuttle Road, and I've seen the traffic, of course, on Tuttle Road increase and increase and increase. And it's only going to increase more when we have the Drown Road development. The cars on Tuttle Road go fast by my house. I'm perhaps a half a mile up from that intersection we're talking about towards Cumberland Center. So now I've seen some bad situations almost happen. And this gentleman that just spoke regarding the visibility, that's totally true. I've seen people coming out of Middle Road, look left, look right, then decide to go. And by then, the traffic coming down Tuttle Road and across the bridge, they're moving. And often the people don't have a caught at the last second. So I think the points that have been made regarding speed on Tuttle Road, all of Tuttle Road really, but particularly down in that section, and the idea of reducing the speed limits from 35 to 25 in the areas that have been mentioned, particularly by the power line down and across the bridge, would go a long way to helping out, to give the Middle Road people an opportunity to see what's coming and, you know, not make them move. So I think that, and also more enforcement down at that, we see very few patrolmen down at that end of Tuttle Road. And the lack of stopping at the stop signs and the speeding, particularly on Tuttle Road, is not, from what I can see, being particularly enforced. So I think some more visibility and intimidation, if you will, of some of the drivers would be a little more to the point in that neck of the woods. Thank you.
Great, thank you, John. Anyone else, please? Yes, sir.
Arnold Klugman, Cumberland Center. The question I have is directed towards the chief. His people have to enforce it. What's the efficacy, and what is it going to take to enforce whatever changes we make in the speed limit or signage? If it's ineffective from his standpoint, because he lives with it, why are we even considering it? So that would be something that the chief should answer. Engineers are great. I are one. That doesn't mean anything. And especially if you have incomplete data. So I think the person that should be the focal point is the chief. His people have to make it happen, and we have to abide by it. So let's give the responsibility to the experts.
Thank you very much. Councilor Val.
I think I have to respond to that a little bit, and particularly to support the police department. I think over this past year, I've heard a number of requests from a number of different neighborhoods and concerns about, well, let's have more enforcement, let's have more enforcement, well, let's have more police presence. We only have 2 officers, for the most part, patrolling at any given time in this community. And we're a very small police department who do a very good job. And I recognize the desire to have the police department be more of a presence, but we don't have those resources, and I think all of us would like to see the police department doubled in size, but we also, on the other side of that, none of us want to see our taxes go up either, so I think we all recognize that that enforcement is a great tool, but we do have limited resources.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to that. Please, yes.
I'm not saying enforcement. That's not under my purview. I want to hear what the chief of police says will be the most effective. If he says putting the signs up without having enforcement is ineffective, then don't put the signs up. If he says he thinks that's the greatest tool, great. But I'm not making those decisions. I'm not jumping to a conclusion. I want to analyze the answer. And I think he has the best data set to make that recommendation.
Thank you. I believe we had another hand up in the back. Please, yes, sir. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Dave Witherill, Cumberland. I'm all for the four-way stop. I frequently make that left-hand turn from Middle Road onto Tuttle Road. And what everybody has said about the sight lines is very true. And particularly when you have somebody coming at you on the other side. They're coming down the hill with a full head of steam, and sometimes you look left, you look right, you look again, somebody's already coming over the bridge, and they're coming so fast, you still can't get out there. So you've looked 2 or 3 times, and you're already feeling like you're caught. And when we're in heavy traffic areas, I don't see what harm it would be to have a four-way stop and make everybody come to a complete stop. Lunt Road, Middle Road in Falmouth, most of us are familiar with, four-way stop, very heavily trafficked. They do fine. So I don't see why we can't have the same safety, because speed limit signs, I see how many people obey speed limits these days. We see the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit for people coming over these bridges that they're working on. How many people do you see going 55? Yeah, mostly 65. So that's why I'm all for the four-way stop. I think it's the only way that we're going to really solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Please, sir.
Good evening. My name's Mark Babcock of Friar Lane. We heard the manager here speak a little bit a while ago about that the Tuttle Road Bridge will be probably under construction for 18 months beginning in 2025. And that will be a single lane at that point in time. So at that point in time, the four-way stop could potentially create other problems for people making turns on and off the bridge. Ultimately, with the state looking to fund that bridge, and we'll have to rework the approaches, majority of the residents on Friar Lane who I've spoken with would prefer a roundabout be put in there. If there's an opportunity to include that in the bridge package and potentially have some cost sharing with the town, I think that would be an optimal solution for everybody here. In the interim, reducing the speed limit would be a good option to start with. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
Just a quick question, Mr. Manager and Mr. Chair. When the construction happens, I assume you guys have thought about in the morning time with school, how heavily trafficked that road is. Will they consider doing the construction at nighttime?
I don't know the answer.
Are you talking about on the bridge?
Correct.
I doubt it. I think it'll be kind of it could be 2 crews, it could be 1 crew, but I think most of the work will be on the daytime. They're going to leave the bridge open, and that's the important piece of it, because
Right.
they were looking to try to condense the construction time to 6 months, but that would have blocked off everything for us for emergency vehicles and everything, and that was just unacceptable, so.
Right.
That's a really good question, though.
It is.
Because Falmouth has been 24, Depot Road, it's been like 24 hours a day. Like,
Yeah,
they've had a
seems like
couple
it.
crews. And
Right.
some of their major changes happen only at night.
Yeah, the issue with us is the volume of traffic. It's much
Right.
lower here than it is in Falmouth on Bucknam Road or any of those, but it's worth an ask.
But a bulk of that traffic is in the morning time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's worth an ask, and let's see where it goes. They haven't put it out the bid yet, so it's not too late to ask.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there was someone else that maybe I'm missing. Anyone else? No? Okay. Okay, please.
Hello, I'm Denise Thorson. I live in Cumberland Center with the Friar people. I am here to go over some stuff that others can't because they couldn't make it. One is support for the idea of the flashier, more modern two-way stop on Middle as it already exists. Like it was said, people think that cross traffic doesn't stop. I think if those are improved, it's restriped, it's very obvious that you are at a stop sign, it'll be easier for people to see, oh, that one doesn't have that over there. Maybe they're not gonna stop. And also having, like, I don't remember seeing a sign that says cross traffic doesn't stop, to be honest, when I'm stopped there. So that probably needs to be more obvious as well. I don't know if they have a variation where you can attach it to the bottom of the stop sign or something.
Sometimes
that's
they
where
put
it is now.
flags on them.
Oh, yeah. So something like that, just to make it more obvious, if that is the issue, at least part of the issue with the accidents that happened there, them thinking that it's a four-way. That plus lowering the speed limit to 25, like we talked about at the last meeting, that this severity chart, it seems bad, but it's because people aren't going 35, they're going 45. And so if people are gonna speed on a 25, they'll be going 35, which would bring us down to normal severity, you know, like people are gonna speed, so if it's lowered to 25 and they're still going 35, then cool, that's the originally intended speed limit. So I feel like those two things combined, like the improved two-way plus lowering a speed limit would be nice. And then to also support the roundabout crew, which it's still out there. I saw a story recently that another town with basically our exact same situation, four-way, people speeding, not too many crashes, but high severity. They did put in, they call it a compact roundabout. It's like a mini roundabout, and the footprint of it is barely anything compared to what was already there. They just rounded out a bit, and it's enough to accommodate a single lane. There's no fancy landscaping in the center of it or anything. It's just, it's small, it's compact, and it does not cost like the $4 million that was quoted at the last meeting, where roundabout was off the table because it's too expensive. The one that they chose was the largest compact roundabout that they put in, and it was like 3, which that's still a lot, I know that, but I feel like there weren't enough like alternatives presented with data, and the data was from August, and school started August 31st last year, so it was just kind of, I feel like the data was a little flawed. I feel like it would need to be done again to get an accurate representation of the claim of, oh, well, it's only gonna be 2 cars deep traffic. Like, maybe, maybe not. So it would be cool to have more data because one of the, where's the quote? I've got the quote. It's MainDOT's analysis requirements when you're looking at traffic improvements is regardless of the funding source, whether it's state and federal or it's a municipalities footing the bill, there should be a reasonable range of alternatives considered during improvement analysis. But the only one presented was the 4-way, and that was probably because it was the cheapest alternative, or the cheapest option. However, the two-way plus lowering a speed limit wasn't also considered. I imagine that would be cheaper, and it might be more effective without causing traffic problems. And again, the traffic analysis wasn't during the school year. So, the mini roundabout's cool. I still think that'd be like a cool idea, but probably too expensive, but at least a more modernized two-way stop with more obvious signage and lower the speed limit. I think that's pretty much, I'm for that, which doesn't matter. I'm not voting, but that's my endorsement. And then comment about like doing bridge work at night. I feel like the bridge it's in the middle of a residential area, so it would be like nightmarish for the people living there to have their sleep interrupted by overnight construction. So I hope that wouldn't be an option for them, because I feel bad for them, but increased traffic, but still, yeah, I wouldn't really appreciate that if I was living there. So that's pretty much it. I think I've covered everything that Friar people have concerns about, so that's it. Thanks.
Great, thank you for carrying the message. Appreciate that.
Mark, can I have
Yes,
just
please.
a second? One of the complications, I think, for a compacted roundabout there, I'm not an engineer, so I'm just guessing. Middle Road North is our only industrial zone in town, and so you have the yachts going in now to the Yarmouth Boatyard, you have larger trucks going into the Stone, New England Specialty Stone, Story Brothers, they all have big trucks, and they have a difficult time maneuvering around short spaces. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and Denise, if you would like any rebuttal time, you can certainly jump up there, but I think the folks at home aren't going to be able to hear that, unfortunately.
Very thoughtful analysis there.
Yeah.
But a lot of those smaller roundabouts that she's talking about are basically mountable, so that they're basically a small raised concrete island in the center instead of the big landscaped island, and the trucks drive right over it. And that's how they get around that. I mean, 85% of the traffic go around it.
That's
and
one
the
way to
big
handle it.
vehicles just go over it because
Well,
they
they
can't
can in
maneuver the turn.
Falmouth if they need to, because they've got that big
That
cement
yeah,
middle.
and that's why you have that cement
And
safety
it's
way.
slanted.
This one is a little different. They used to have them in South Portland, if you remember, by, I think it was Uncle Andy's Bakery, right down in that area. It was a much smaller roundabout than the bigger ones. And honestly, that's what the trucks did. They basically kind of drove over it, so it kind of, for most of the traffic, it was easy to get around and maneuver around, but for the bigger vehicles, they could still drive over it and not damage their load or anything. So they kind of work, but they're not as effective as the larger ones, and I think that's one of the reasons DOT has kind of gotten away from the smaller ones too, so. But it's a great idea for a low-traffic area, and they do work, but people have to comply with that, but sometimes they can't because of the size of their vehicles.
Okay, so if there's anyone else from the public, please raise your hand. Please, sir, yes.
Jim Balinson, also from Friar Lane. I think I'm in the distinct minority on Friar Lane, not being as concerned about a potential four-way stop. I drive that intersection every day during the high-traffic times, and although at times, right now, we have a hard time making a left turn out of Friar Lane to go towards the bridge, I don't think the traffic will back up as much as people on Friar Lane are concerned, and there won't be as much of an issue with people using Friar Lane as a shortcut. But I think there is not any confidence in the analysis that's been presented so far. So I think if you are going to go with a four-way stop, if that ends up being the ultimate decision, either now or in the future, I think more analysis needs to be done. I think also with the change coming with the bridge, it would be hard to do something like a roundabout, which would be ideal, but may not be geographically or economically feasible. But I can't see that happening before the bridge reconstruction is finished. And the severity of crashes at that location, is a serious issue. And, you know, I was struck by Bill's remark that the issue is not so much people failing to stop on Middle Road, but the people on Middle Road sort of assuming that it's a four-way stop and pulling out, expecting the traffic is going to stop. I think lowering the speed limit does make sense. And even if people still speed, as my neighbor said, they'll be going 35 and a 25 instead of 45 and a 35. So that will improve things. I think we may eventually end up with a four-way stop there, but I think more work needs to be done before the neighborhood will be confident that that's the smart way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else before we close public discussion on that topic and deliberate here as a council on that issue? Seeing none, I will open it up to the council for thoughts, motions, considerations.
I'll give you a motion.
Okay.
I don't want to get run out of town by all the neighbors down there, so I move,
Wow.
I move to table action on a four-way stop sign and request that the MDOT lower the speed limit on Tuttle Road from 35 to 25 miles an hour, 1,500 feet in each direction of the Middle Road intersection.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a
Oh, you
second.
seconded.
Yeah, and so now we will open it up for discussion. I believe, I saw your hand first, if you'd like to.
Robert's Rule of Order, I believe there is no discussion on a motion to table. I would ask that you hold your seconds in reserve.
My apologies, Counselor Vale.
Are you withdrawing your second? So
No.
that we can,
Sure, yes, I'll
Okay,
withdraw my
so that-
second.
I wondered how we were going to handle that.
very
Ronnie
good.
says, well, do we want to stay here all night? No, we don't want to stay here all night.
But the motion, the second has been
Withdrawn.
withdrawn momentarily, potentially?
Yes.
So
I
that we
certainly,
can
I certainly
engage in
support
additional
Ronnie's,
discussion.
Ronnie's point there. I think that Mr. Balance's remark about further study is warranted. And I think that in the interim, I think we have some opportunities to make sure that what we do make, the decisions are lasting and beneficial.
So I think this needs to be two motions. I'll make the first one. I move to table action on a four-way stop sign, period.
You can't do that. You may amend the motion.
Oh, you left your, you didn't withdraw your motion?
There is.
There's no second currently.
No second for the initial motion.
So
that
the motion
Councilor Cobb
fails.
put forward. So the motion fails temporarily as we sort this out. But it looks like you're seeking to amend the current language of the current
To
motion.
just say, I think we need two motions. I think we need to table the four-way stop and then make a motion to petition the DOT for a change in the, we need two motions.
Well, it's written as a conjunction.
So we could withdraw the motion, right? Could you withdraw the motion?
The
There's no
initial motion
seconds.
has failed, so there are
Okay.
currently no motions on the
All right,
table.
so
for
then now
any-
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I will move to table action on a four-way stop sign at Middle and Tuttle.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a table, which I've been reminded by my esteemed colleague here that once there is a motion and a second on a table motion, no further discussion may continue under Robert's Rules of Order. So as a result, we will move directly into a vote on that revised motion. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Now I'll give you another motion, if you will have it.
My clarifying question will be, can it relate to the same topic?
It's a separate
Separate
action.
motion. Okay. Please.
Get you to the same
Okay.
place.
Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, please.
I move that we request that the Maine DOT lower the speed limit on Tuttle Road to 25 miles per hour, 1,500 feet in each direction of the Middle Road intersection.
Second.
How is that any different than my original motion?
We have a second here.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. This is not a table motion, so as a result, we can now discuss this issue. Mr. Cobb, I think it's a fair
I don't
question.
see the point. I mean, how is that any different than my original motion?
Because the original motion involved a table. It's just a Robert's Rule of Order kind of thing. When you table a motion, you can't discuss it any further. So when you table something, that's like done, it stops it.
You better hope there's some discussion.
But there's a second part to this motion, and that's to request, it was, as it was written here, the second part was to request the DOT to reduce the speed limit. I moved that we still ask them to.
And I would argue that we're still moving in the exact same direction, which is good.
Right.
So,
I have no issue.
okay.
let's move
So
on.
we have a motion, we have a second to request that the MDOT lower the speed limit on Tuttle Road to 25 miles an hour, 1,500 feet in each direction of the Middle Road intersection. Is there any more discussion
We have
before I
enough
call for a
judges
vote?
and attorneys in the room. I think we could get this right.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for navigating that. Challenging.
Okay,
situation.
we are now, if this is about the issue that just was voted on? Yes. Please, you can have just a quick second, sir.
I'm not going to talk about libraries, don't worry. The other issue is the faded stop signs on Middle Road. And I don't know if it requires DOT action to put in the more modern, larger stop signs with the blinking lights, which might also bring people's attention to the fact that cross-traffic does not stop. I mean, whether that's something that also can be considered in the interim if that's within the town's control.
Yep. Thank you, Jim.
We heard, at the last meeting, we heard from the Knowleses who live on the corner there, and they were concerned about a larger sign, especially when the manager said it would be 3 or 4 feet. But the one at the top of Johnson Road, if you ever come that way back from Shaw's, that's not a very big sign, 2 feet maybe, but it's on solar lighting and it's motion activated, so when cars come up the Johnson Road hill, the lights go on around the stop sign. So something like that might work.
So moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is also a four-way stop discussion, 23-103, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on the recommendation of Goral Palmer Engineers to make the intersection of Route 100 and Range Road at J Brothers a four-way stop. I'm actually going to pass this off to my colleague here to discuss this a little bit. I believe you were able to attend a workshop that I was out
Sure.
of town for that discussed this and what a possible solution may be here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a really great neighborhood meeting at Valhalla, talking about the Range Road and J Brothers stop, or the accidents, and kind of the output of those dialogues were that the accidents are typically happening when people are taking the left turn into J Brothers. Now, my esteemed counselor colleague, Mr. Kopp, who happens to work in the automotive business, also noticed that a possible solution could be looking at shaving the hill down 2 to 3 feet, which would dramatically improve our sight lines. And also there's some pesky vegetation, I think, that a couple of maybe not the most beautiful looking pines in the world. We love all of our trees, but some pines that could come down, which would also improve the sight distance in that particular area. Anything to add, Mr. Kopp?
Just the fact that eventually the water line is going to be connected from Range Road to the bridge, which it's already installed under the bridge now. And we thought that we might be able to team up with the DOT to shave the hill off when the water line project goes forward. And that dramatically would increase the sight distance, and there would be no need for any stop signs if you could increase the sight distance, so.
And it's my understanding that this request for lowering the hill for sight distance purposes would be requested as part of fiscal year '25's budget, correct?
I believe that's
Out
what
of
it was. Yep.
TIF funding, correct? Okay. Yep.
And I don't think it requires the water line to go in, because once we've checked the vertical curve out, and you were right, Ron, it's a very short distance that would have to be taken off. the tricky part with this, and Randy and I were talking this, Randy Dunton, our engineer, and I were talking about this before the meeting. Depending on which driveway you go out, it makes a difference. Because think about where the crest of that hill is now. If we lower it after that crest, it doesn't help that driveway that's on the Falmouth side of J Brothers. So we want to make sure that we lower it far enough that we push that crest so that furthest driveway can also see down that hill. And it literally is probably less than 2 feet that has to come off that hill. And that will get us, sounds crazy, but the federal highway requirements are you're supposed to have at least 6 inches of a view. We're looking at 1.5 feet. So that the first time it's paved, you lose your 6 inches, and I really don't want to go that close. So we're going to be looking at shaving off at least 1.5 feet to 2 feet, and that will increase that sight distance almost all the way to the bottom of the hill. So we're pretty excited about that. The vegetation, as you mentioned, Councilor Filson, is also very important because it is hard. You have to creep further out of that driveway to see beyond that vegetation that has really crept out almost, so people are having a hard time seeing. So we're pretty confident that'll be before you in the budget process. If approved tonight, I will reach out to DOT to see if we can put together a municipal partnership agreement with DOT that perhaps we can get some funding on their part as well. So I think it'll work out well either way, and it'll be a much smaller capital project than the water main project would be.
Okay, this is a public discussion, so anyone who has a comment on this particular item, please feel free to raise your hand. Please, yes. If you don't mind just stepping up and saying your name and where you live.
Kathy Wright on 60 Skillen Road. And it's interesting to hear this discussion about getting across the road, because I can hardly get across to my mailbox, without getting run over almost one time by a school bus. But anyway, that is exactly the right way to go, is to shave that hill. But the other thing I would recommend is, after that last serious accident on Range Road, there were two signs put up on the hill going up, very close to each other, which are terribly ineffective, because where those signs need to be is down by Lower Methodist Road. So people, before they go across that smaller bridge, and you should know this, Ron, then they would see in advance. So have that first sign down there, so people going and approaching that hill will already be going slow. So that's my recommendation. But yeah, that shaving that hill is absolutely the answer. There isn't enough traffic on Range Road to justify a four-way stop, in my opinion anyway. So yeah, I think you guys are in the right direction. But move that sign up by Lower Methodist. And I don't know who put it in, but there's two there. They're very close together, so I never even noticed them until I saw them one day. So the other thing that's interesting is people don't seem to understand that stop means stop. There's a stop sign, you stop, you look, and then you go. And I hear all the time about people, well, I didn't see the stop sign, or I didn't think it applied to me, or I thought everybody was going to stop. If there's a stop sign, you stop, and you proceed when it's safe. But that's just me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
The signs were put up by DOT, and I think they say Hill blocks view. So that's it's another sign that if you know what you're thinking about and know why it's there, you'd understand it. But I think the effectiveness of those signs are not that great. So, but
Anyone else from the audience on this agenda item? Seeing none, I will open it up to the council to see if there's anyone that has discussion or a motion.
Shall I give you two?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. I move to table consideration of the four-way stop sign at Range Road and Route 100.
We have a motion, and
Do we want to table this, or do we want to kill this?
table indefinitely.
I believe Councilor Story King is looking to bifurcate the draft motion into two, one being table of the four-way stop sign, and then the second motion potentially being the remainder of that sentence, which is request that MDOT.
Well, I don't want to be the one that has to remember to bring it off the table in 13 years when it comes up again, so maybe
I won't
But-
be here.
I'll remove my motion.
Well, I would say regardless, the whole clause will be tabled, and as a result, whether it's read together as a single clause or it's separated into two separate motions.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and we have a second to table and at the consideration of a four-way stop sign at Range Road and Route 100, and as a result of that, there is no more discussion on that matter. All those in favor of that motion to table? Unanimous.
And further, I would motion that we, lost my place, request that the Maine DOT lower the speed limit from the Falmouth Town line to the Graytown line to 35 miles per hour.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous again. Thank you. Okay, moving to item 23-106, to approve a 3-year contract with Cumberland County for general assistance. This is an area that I may bounce a little bit over to our manager to help me if I'm missing something here, but generally speaking, our town staff and folks in our finance department help process general assistance applications. And I believe that we have, in a given week, anywhere from 2 to 6 people coming in and seeking general assistance, which is state-funded to the extent of about 70%. So the idea being that a town puts up a certain amount of money to help with those who need assistance through the general assistance program, and by putting up those funds, the state will match it by 70%. And so, for instance, if we put up $21,000 in general assistance funding, we would receive a total of we'd leverage effectively $70,000 towards that initiative. We have been using town staff pretty exclusively for this issue for quite some time, and I understand that one individual in our finance department, about half of their time is spent processing these applications. And so that individual is also needed in other areas, in finance, in accounts payable, and other management of town government. So we are looking to actually contract out the general assistance application process to Cumberland County, an organization that does this frequently and also maintains a little bit of anonymity, I believe, as we've talked about in the past. So the motion tonight is effectively to approve the contract with Cumberland County to outsource the general assistance application processing and filing for those claims. Did I miss anything, Mr. Manager? Or-
No, I think you got all the high points.
Okay. Oh, please. Yeah, we will in just one second, please, but go ahead, Councilor.
What will we do with this person if they don't work, if they don't have 6 hours of people showing up?
Well, that's more than we're spending, that's less than we're spending now. I believe it'll be the other way around. We'll be charged $65 an hour if they spend more than 6 hours. Essentially, if they start looking like we're going in the other direction, we can renegotiate that to 4 hours.
Okay.
And that's available to us. This is a service that other communities, if you remember, we used to use Opportunity Alliance for many years, and they recently got out of the business of doing general assistance, so the county has stepped in and provided this as a regional service to a lot of smaller towns in the county as well. So they're doing it for about a half a dozen towns now.
I believe we had a comment from the public. Did you see? I think addressed it.
King addressed it pretty well.
Okay, perfect. Any other comments from the public on this? Any discussion from the council as well? Okay, seeing none, I would accept a motion if someone is willing to give one.
I'll give you one. I move to approve a 3-year contract with Cumberland County for general assistance.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Looks like we have a
I
question.
have a hard time with the $20,000 cost for 6 hours a week.
I believe we're currently
Paying
paying
more than that.
around that amount currently to our own employees.
It's 12,000 wages, current year revenue budgeted, we've budgeted, all right, 14 if you add health insurance and another 15. Okay.
No, you may ask a question, please.
But I may be in the minority, so.
This is just a general question. I don't know how these things work. With the finance, how much of it is automated? Like, is there software that's used to like help the finance people do their jobs? I'm just curious, like, or is this all done manually?
It's all manual. It's an intake process that requires the applicants to bring a lot of documentation related to, water bill, sewer bill, all utilities, rents, all those type of things, their employment. There's a lot of intake that happens. It's a typical process could take a couple hours for a person to process all that, then make sure that the county has software that they use to help with the intake, but we're doing most of this stuff manually. And the next item, it's basically seeing what's available to each person under the general assistance ordinance. There's a cap for how many members are in your family, and it's changed every year. So that gets updated, and then it gets basically sent into the state for reimbursement. So, a typical intake can take, 2 to 3 hours of employee time from start to finish. And it's taking more time as we're getting more people, and, things don't seem to be getting much better.
Cool.
I think
Yeah.
one of my biggest takeaways when we were chatting about this is that there's a level of being anonymous, not having to know the person that you're talking to, and then also having someone that has expertise in this. I don't think that our staff is necessarily the best fit for the job all the time in this scenario, and I think we need to be prioritizing their time to be working on things that we're paying them to work on. Sorry, go ahead.
Please, Councilor
There-
Bill. No, that's great.
Was it my turn?
Yes, it is.
I think when the Finance Committee met and we reviewed all this, it was a net savings to the town. We wouldn't have brought this forward if it was going to cost us more money. And I think the other reasons are just as important, but I think as far as the taxpayers are concerned about, it is a savings to the community going forward. If we find that it's not, then, as Bill said, we have the option to renegotiate the contract. So
Please, yes.
There's so many different, we're in the day and age of software, right, and technology. And to your point about anonymity and being anonymous, and Mr. Chair, you might be able to answer this. Is there a way to have that person or persons submit their documents in advance, right, to possibly cut down the time for that person? If those folks, I don't know if they're seniors, I don't know all the different types of folks, right, but we're driven, right, to submit documents all the time online, right?
That won't happen. That just is, the folks that come in are struggling, and they're basically, most of the time, it's the first meeting is an intake meeting to say, please come back with all these documents next time, and that usually takes about an hour just for that initial interview. The next time they come in, it's usually 3/4 of the stuff that we went over, and we have to start again. And it's time-consuming because there's also compassion that goes with this.
Absolutely.
And I know everybody here wants to see people treated fairly and equitably, and that's the hard part. And in our case, it's a lot of the working poor in our community that are really struggling. So, fortunately, we have a food pantry, which is a safety net, but the bigger issue is rent and the increase in rents and the increase in the utilities that is really difficult to keep up with for a lot of families. So I think it's just, Scott, it's just that a lot of these people don't have those type of resources or understand how to use them, and
Can they be
that's where
dropped off?
educating.
Could the documents be dropped off?
We usually give them the first meeting, this is the big list that you need to come back with, and that's why it's a lot of time that's invested in the one-on-one,
Correct.
and then the coaching, and then the job coaching, and also sharing the resources that are available at the county level too, and that's the connection with the county, that there are programs that we don't offer, obviously, here, that the county offers that they can connect them to as well. So it's kind of twofold, but good question.
Thank you. And the other point, it sounds like there was a discrepancy, somewhere between 20 and 15,000. Counselor King said somewhere that the math was somewhere between 12 and 15,000, and it
Oh,
sounds
for
like.
internal purposes, the county is a $20,000 contract for 6 hours a week. We can pull that back to 4 hours a week if things get better, but right now they're going the other way for us. Internally, we were spending 12 to 15,000 on salaries.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will also just add, oh, please, Mr. Sherman.
Bruce Sherwin, Blanchard Road. This is maybe a small potatoes item, but looking at it and thinking about it, I would consider trying to make the contract end on June 30th, try to get it to match up to our fiscal year. I don't know if that's important or not, but something to consider if it is important.
It is important, and it will be prorated. So thank you. That's a good point, Bruce. Appreciate that. It is a 3-year contract, but it's prorated on the number of months left in our fiscal year.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your comment. I will also say that serving on the.
I have one more question. Who will this person be accountable to?
To me.
To you?
Yep.
So you'll be the person who makes sure that that person shows up 6 hours a week? and-
Absolutely. They're right in the West Conference Room. We help with appointments by forwarding them to them. We try to set them up in advance so we know
Okay.
who's coming in.
Good.
Yeah, and my final comment on this, I guess, would be serving in the Legislative Policy Committee with MMA. This was a huge topic that I heard every municipality talking about, is we just don't have enough staff or resources to handle the general assistance requests that are coming in, and it's taking away from full-time positions in certain areas. And so I personally see this as a larger consolidation and frankly regionalization of an issue that we all as communities are facing and we're currently keeping on our own books, which again, it will be outsourced, but again, it can leverage larger resources that the county may have that we don't as an individual municipality. So with that said, I will entertain a motion if anybody is willing.
I gave you one.
Oh, I believe, excuse me, we do have a motion and we do have a second on file. So all those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next item on the agenda is to hold a public hearing to adopt the Maine Municipal Association Model General Assistance Ordinance and Appendices A through H for the period of October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024. Mr. Manager, I'll let you kind of provide context here, but I think in general, these are the standard ordinances that are drafted by Maine Municipal Association each and every year. They come before the council and they go before, frankly, every legislative body of every municipality in the town to choose to adopt them if you are participating in the general assistance program. I think most municipalities adopt these, given the fact that they are kind of the standard because they're coming from MMA. We've adopted them in the past. I did not personally see anything out of order from previous years here, but we'll open it up to the council to discuss any questions or concerns that you might have.
Bill, was anything flagged from your perspective?
No, it's just the costs are going up and up and up, and
Yeah.
I just think that's the nature of the beast. We're still getting reports of people, being evicted and looking for new housing because landlords are converting their home for higher rents, and there's nowhere to go. And they move further and further west or north, and that's really the only options available to a lot of folks here. When you look at we're under the Portland numbers that the Portland HMFA for how much aid a family can get. Basically, it ranges from a person of one with a household of one is about $13.67 is the maximum amount of assistance a month to a family of 5, which is $3,200. And again, that's 70% reimbursable, provided the paperwork matches the guidelines that are in these appendices. And again, that's why it's important we get the right folks behind this.
Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none? Any further discussion on the council? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion if one is coming.
I move to adopt the Maine Municipal Association Model General Assistance Ordinance and Appendices A through H for the period of October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion on those motions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 23-108, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on a credit enhancement agreement with Foley's Gym as recommended by the TIF committee. I don't know who would like to take this from the TIF committee, but I'm happy to discuss the fact that this is a parcel of land in, on the Forsyth area on Route 100, on Route 1, excuse me, that has been open for quite some time. And I know, Mr. Manager, you've worked tirelessly for many years to try to attract particular businesses to this area. I know, Mr. Kopp, you and I have talked many, many times about the need for us to broaden our tax base. Councilor King, you and I have brought this issue up quite a bit as well. And I'm happy to report, I guess, that Foley's Gym, which is a large kind of upscale gym in Scarborough right now, is planning on setting up its second location here in Cumberland on Route 1 in that location. And one of the things before the council here to help incentivize them, like we do with many businesses, to come into Cumberland is to offer a credit enhancement agreement, which is a rebate of up to 50% of their property taxes or $500,000 as a cap. I don't believe that we will probably meet that $500,000 number because the duration of the TIF zone in which this particular business will be sitting expires in, I believe, 2028. Is that correct?
That's wrong. My bad on that. It's 2038.
2038,
Yeah,
okay.
So it's 14 years, essentially.
Got it. So 14 years left on that. But again, it's an exciting opportunity, I think, for our town. It's an exciting opportunity for the business. I know they are very excited to be in Cumberland and have worked hard to kind of get to this spot. And so I guess we'll open it up for discussion from the council about this, if you have any questions. But it was recommended by the TIF committee to move forward with that.
You want us to talk about it before you open the public hearing?
Yeah.
It was recently brought to our attention, or my attention, that this particular item did not appear in the public agenda in the forecaster. This is the second time something like this has happened on an important item. So I think perhaps we listen to people who might be here tonight about it, but I think we should also push action out to our next meeting. That's my thought.
Shirley, just out of curiosity, what are your concerns?
What's that?
What are your concerns, just like
That
looking
we
at
didn't
it?
give legal public notice.
Okay. More so on the topic, what are your concerns, other than the notice?
What are my concerns about the topic? I do have, this is the last lot in this development, and I see credit enhancement agreements used as a way to attract businesses that might be an anchor business or that would bring other businesses to the area. That's how we've always used them before. And this is the last lot build out, so we're not looking for other businesses to move to that particular site. So I'm not sure that we need to give them a credit enhancement agreement. Plus, I would look, I know that they're in Scarborough, but I wonder, are they a national chain or business? Because they
don't believe so.
produce supplements, so where do they produce their supplements that they sell? They sell Foley Gym supplements, so where do they produce those? And
I don't know their supply chain.
will those be produced on, I don't know. Not that I want to get into the weeds about that, but I just,
So can I just ask, Mr. Mayor, how long has that lot been open?
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years, and we've been unable to attract a business there
Correct.
in that period of time.
Correct.
It is also, as you correctly mentioned, the last lot available. And there's a 55 senior plus affordable unit going next door. There's also housing to the other side of it as well on the north side. To me, it strikes me as a perfect type of business that we would want, where members of the community actually come together and meet and see each other. My bigger concern would be to have a business that was just there for tax revenue and doesn't, again, create this sense of community. To me, it's the perfect type of business. I do understand the point about this issue coming up more quickly than maybe was listed in the forecast, or do we know when this issue was officially added, Mr. Manager?
I'm surprised it wasn't in the forecaster because it was ready for the agenda, but it was basically online Friday on our website as well as posted in the crier or with the agenda
The
when it
link
went
to
out
the
on Friday.
crier didn't work.
Well, it was posted in Town Hall, so that's all we really have to do for public notice. So I don't, it's not time sensitive, it's just surprising that it's come up tonight.
Do
so.
they need to know tonight?
No, they are on a ticking time limit as well, so they've got so many days to close and get planning board approval and all that before the deal expires. So they're on parallel tracks with other approvals. So if you want to table it for 2 weeks, that's fine.
I think from my perspective, listening to this, if it's been vacant for 20 years, I'm not really sure what other business we would be looking to attract. And it's income that we're not already receiving. So I would be in favor of moving it forward, but happy to hear other people's thoughts.
My question is, would they come here without a credit enhancement agreement? That has to be the question we flush out.
I think that's part of their financial plan that they presented to us and said, they can do Cumberland if we could offer the same credit enhancement agreements that Exactitude and just about every business, every one of the 6 businesses that are located there have received.
But we didn't give one to Belted Cow.
Yes, we did.
Yep.
Oh, when I looked up, I couldn't find Belted Cow. I know we talked about it, but
The only one that didn't get one initially was Pack Edge, because they didn't ask, and they subsequently came back after they were sold, and you granted a credit enhancement agreement to the new owner of the Northeast Beverage Company.
Please, Councilor Kopp.
I travel by the one in Haggis Parkway in Scarborough quite often, and it's probably one of the busiest gyms. No matter what time of day you go by, there seems to be a good following there. And I think, Mark, you hit it right on the head. It's a perfect fit in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
With the 55 and older people living next door, I mean, I think it's within walking distance, and I think it's just a good fit. This lot has been vacant for 20 years. It's time to get something moving on it, so.
Please.
Everyone's going to roll their eyes at me for being the token warm and fuzzy, but the Surgeon General of the United States said that 1 out of 2 people are experiencing measurable amounts of loneliness daily. That's half the people in this room. And one of his proposed solutions in his larger framework is for communities to create more spaces for people to come together, because the results of these measurable levels of loneliness end up being social isolation, which then manifests themselves in things like stroke, heart attack, and other horrifying conditions. So I think that creating a space gigantic where people can work out but also have a coffee together is a great thing. So yeah, thumbs up from me.
I'm not opposed to the project. I'm opposed to the process, and I'm not sure that I think they would probably still come. I just wonder a little bit about the business model, because 2 miles down the road, you have Planet Fitness and you have Foresight Nutrition, who offer the very same services. And I see a lot of people I know at Planet Fitness. And they drop their dog off, they go to Planet Fitness, then they go to Foresight Nutrition, and then they go home, So
Well,
I want them to be a successful business if they move in there.
So I believe we have some questions or comments from the public, please.
I understand the lot's been there for 20 years, and I'll assume nobody in 20 years has expressed an interest. True?
No, that's not true.
Okay, why did the other entity not take it? Or
They
entities?
couldn't negotiate a deal with the owner of the properties, and they moved up the street. Main Standards is that other property.
Okay. Has anybody seen this corporation's performance statement, what are they going to be charging their membership? Because they're expecting a lot of people. Is it going to fit with the economic realities of this community, the 55 plus?
I can speak just out of personal experience. My in-laws live in Scarborough, and one is in their 80s, the other is in their 70s, and they work out there 3-4 times a week, and it's one of their favorite things to do.
I'm not talking age, I'm talking money.
Well, I would imagine Scarborough is a reasonably good benchmark comparison town to Cumberland. You know, I don't think that this is their job to come up with their potential business model and where they'll draw their customers from.
Yeah, but if their membership, not knowing what it is substantially higher than the mean income, I don't see the numbers occurring. I understand attracting businesses with a tax incentive, but we keep on hearing about housing, housing, housing. Why aren't we putting housing there? That's my comments.
It's not
Thank you.
allowed. It's not allowed on that site. That's why housing isn't going there.
Okay.
It's only
And also,
only for
I would
business.
have a feeling, just to be clear, that if we proposed housing on that site, if it were allowed, the question would be, why are we adding more housing and adding more potential
I've heard
individuals who
tonight
might come to our school?
consistently, housing issues.
This is the exact thing that every single week, every single month, we are asked by folks, why aren't you doing a better job of getting businesses in there to broaden the tax base, so not all of the burden falls on residential property tax?
And I understand
This
that
is exactly what
completely.
we're trying to do. There are signs on Route 1, when you drive into Cumberland, that say certified business friendly. They're blue, and I want to make sure the businesses know that.
And I want to make sure the business is successful.
This will help them be
And if
successful.
Quite
they
sure
don't-
they will be. They're very successful in Scarborough. So,
Well, I understand, I've been there.
yeah. And I compare Cumberland to Scarborough, so we're not far behind.
I just question what the performance statement really looks like on their behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Please forgive me in advance. What lot are we talking about, since I live on Route 1?
The one that's up the top of the hill on Skyview Drive, it used to be like the staging area. That entire lot is going, that's the last lot left on the
So literally at
commercial
the end of my
site.
street,
The end of your street, correct.
where the 55 plus is going.
They're
On
on,
the other side.
kind of further toward exactitude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're still at the end of that street.
Yeah,
When it was a
it's a
through street-
20-foot drop off from the end of
No,
your street.
but when it was a through street, it's
yeah.
the end of that street.
There is no through street.
When it was a through street, because it was a through street. Trust me, all the dump trucks were coming through our street pretty fast, and they were going down that hill and going down to exactitude. I know, I saw it every day, when that construction was going on for the apartment.
Maybe when the construction was, when they were
Correct.
building your neighborhood, but there's no way to do that today.
No, not today, but I'm saying, I'm just trying to make a point. It was at the end of that street, our street. Everything's happening, seems like, at the end of our street.
And that's no secret. I mean, that's been a commercial lot since it was proposed before the planning board almost 20 years ago. So that's changed. Your neighborhood changed when it became residential. That was all supposed to be commercial, and it was allowed to be residential. But it was always the intent of the council to keep some of that commercial, and we've kept, I think, 6 of those lots commercial. This will be the last one.
I was just asking where it was. That was my only intent.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please, sir.
Bob Knupp from Hawks Ridge. I played this violin before you before, so I don't want to take much time. We live in Hawks Ridge. We're right in the middle of the Route 1 corridor. And every time one of these things comes up, I have the same question. How much more traffic will Route 1 have to bear for this particular business? I asked the same thing when you approved the vet center. By the way, they started blasting this morning. Our place shook. But anyway, that's progress. The problem I have is that there's only so much that you can do with putting vehicles on Route 1. And if you're talking about something as busy as a gym, you're talking about a lot of cars. So it's adding up, and it's getting harder and harder to get onto Route 1, particularly if you're coming down Falcon Drive to Route 1 and trying to make a left-hand turn. It's the Tuttle Road thing all over again. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
And see, that's one of the concerns I have with issuing a credit enhancement agreement, using the TIF monies for the credit enhancement agreement, when I just wonder if there's a better use for that money, like making Route 1 safer, or I just don't know.
Well, we've added $1 million of investment into Route 1 with a center turn lane and turn lanes down on the northern end. They will go through a traffic permitting process that may require a turning lane in there, but that will all come under the planning board's review and their purview.
That would
So,
all come out of what?
under the planning board review and the requirements that DOT will make for their traffic entrance permit. They
But-
may not trigger a traffic movement permit, but they may require them to do some enhancements as well.
And then we would have to pay for it.
Typically, we have, out of the TIF monies, paid for turning lanes and paid for improvements,
Right.
on Skyview Drive as well. So those would typically be TIF eligible amounts to entice businesses to come here and to help make it to our standards. So, I mean, it's how we establish the district, and I think this will be a great addition to that. I mean, the people in that neighborhood were asking for cafes and asking for more of a social place than just just a doctor's office or something that was a kind of a destination. This, I think, will be more of a better space, and I think it was a good fit, and it's been about 3 years in the negotiations. So we've been back and forth with them for several years now, and it seems like they're ready to pull the trigger and actually make it happen here in Cumberland. So I think it'll be
So
great.
my next question is for the TIF committee. Are there enough TIF funds in that TIF district to give the credit enhancement agreement for the next, I thought it was 5 years, but it's 15 years, and to pay for any infrastructure that's required for the development of this project and whatever we need to do to encourage the 55 plus, which hasn't even started, hopefully will. They'll get their news this year, and hopefully that will start. I'm not on the TIF committee, so I don't know that financing is solid, and
Yes, I can speak to that. It is, and it's one of these things where we've been talking in the sense of we have quite a few projects. We've been obviously using TIF funds and TIF districts the way they've been intended, and with the success of those districts over time, this will start to develop a larger resource of available TIF funds that we can use. The concern almost being that at some point, we're gonna need to find things to use those funds for, because TIF funds are unfortunately a use it or lose it type situation, where if you don't spend them within the allotted time period, they roll back into the general fund and you're forced to pay county taxes on those as well.
yeah, no, I
school
understand how
taxes,
TIF
right?
works.
So, yes, the short answer is yes. Any other questions or comments? Looks like we have a question here.
Bruce Joe and Blanchard Road may have a number of questions, because I don't understand this stuff very well, and I'm pretty sharp, I think, too, but, so credit enhancement agreements. Did you give us the numbers, Mr. Segrist, at the beginning of what we're talking about for money here?
So
Could you refresh that?
It would be a rebate of up to 50% of their property taxes or a cap of $500,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so who is that negotiated already? Have we given them a deal?
That's what the request is.
What's that?
That's what the request is.
Oh, so we don't know what we're gonna give them?
Well, we know that there's a cap of $500,000.
We know.
We know
We
there's a
don't.
cap.
So who
So-
negotiates that, Mr. Shane? Does he negotiate with these people?
I believe he does quite a bit of the negotiation as a part economic development officer as well, but also, I believe the $500,000 cap is capped based on state law, but that's something.
I understand the cap. I'm talking about negotiating with them. Is it a given number that they get? Do they already know what's available to them, or?
They have made the request for up to 50% or the cap of $500,000, whichever occurs first.
Okay.
And so, again, in my view, please go ahead.
Yeah, so they asked for 50%. we didn't offer 50%.
That's what pretty much all the Route 1 credit enhancement agreements are. The other 6 lots are at that number as well.
Yeah, I just wondered. So what happens in an agreement like this when we sign it and the business goes belly up? What happens then, Bill?
Well, remember that a credit enhancement agreement requires them to pay their property taxes. So just rough numbers, if this is a $10 million facility, it'll generate over $200,000 in property taxes. We split that 50-50 after they pay it. If they reach $500,000, that's when it stops.
Yeah.
So figure 5 years on a project like this, 5 to 7 years, it'll stop. And then all that money basically stays in the TIF fund for the town council to authorize where it goes. That can go to infrastructure improvements, that can go to a lot of things that we have on in our TIF schedule. So this is a big project. This will be one that'll probably be one of the few that will end up capping at 500,000 in a short period of time.
You used the word remember, Bill. Remember, I don't know what's going on.
I'm sorry.
Okay? So I don't remember. So I didn't, my head's swimming from what you just said. I don't know what happens if they go belly up still, even though I
Well,
asked the
There's
question.
still property taxes on the building, and there's still property taxes on the property
And
itself.
who do you go after that? Is it a corporation or is it individuals?
Well, typically it's liened, and then it can be foreclosed upon. With the value of a property like this, most likely the bank will step in and do some type of sale or some type of auction on that
Yeah.
property. So there's a lot of value to these types of properties that typically we don't see them going to foreclosure for tax purposes.
Okay, well, I just wondered, because I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about credit enhancement agreements. The subject of Scarborough's been brought up here. I don't know how many of you saw, there was an article in the paper, front page, about Scarborough this past week. Did you see it, Bill?
I did.
What was the topic there? What did they talk about?
The economic development in Scarborough, lowering the property taxes next year.
Yes, because they've used I think they've used their TIF money wisely. I don't think they've used it for any affordable housing.
I think they have some.
You do?
In the new development out there, that new development out at Scarborough Downs will be about the size of Cumberland when it's finished.
I don't think, they didn't say anything about it in the article, at least. But anyway, so TIF money for commercial uses is really a good thing, I think we can say. And this is probably a good deal, as long as we are going to collect our taxes. All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I would also say that I think they're expanding for a reason, because they are successful and they've almost outgrown their 28,000 square foot facility in Scarborough, and there's. The comment was that doesn't guarantee success, and that's also correct, but I'm personally excited for this business to call Cumberland home, and I hope that we live up to the business-friendly name and use these credit enhancement agreements for the purpose that they were designed.
So one thing I forgot to say is, between the new assisted housing down there for 55 plus and this building, Tuttle Road's gonna get some more work out, isn't it?
Most likely,
That
which,
decision on Tuttle Road may become more and more important.
it's a fair point. Everything is connected. Any other discussion on this topic? Seeing none, I would welcome a motion.
I'll give you a motion, Mr. Chair. I move to approve a credit enhancement agreement with Foley's Gym as recommended by the TIF committee.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Counselor Vail.
We all know that things change. And the exercise of watching a community grow, as painful as it may be to some people, particularly those of us who've lived here a long time, have seen the growth in the community, and some of us say, gee, I wish it was back the way it was when I was a kid. And the fact is, it's never going to go back to the way it was a kid. The burden on this council is to make prudent decisions that effectively better the lives of the community, help us to control our tax rate, and in general, provide for good health and well-being of the community. We are no guarantee or guarantor of success, whether it's a homeowner building a house and whether he can pay his mortgage and continue to stay there, or whether the business is down on Route 1 or Middle Road or on Route 100 are successful. It's our job to make sure that we can give them the tools that they need to be successful. And I think that's the duty of a community, is to provide for the habitation, make sure that we have a diverse community, and that includes businesses. If you ask me what I would like to see of businesses in this community, well, probably a gym wouldn't be on the top of my list. I get my exercise in a different fashion on a ladder every day. So I support this, and that's enough.
Thank you. Please.
I think a gym is a great idea. I think a coffee shop, I hope they serve coffee, goes in there as well. And but I am concerned that we haven't heard from enough people because of the lack of notice in the forecaster. And every meeting, I'm all about the process. And we heard from 3 people tonight who didn't come for this item, but had things to say about this item. So I'm going to vote against it tonight and hope that we might put it on the agenda for next time. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, we do have a motion, and we do have a second to move forward with this. So I will ask and call for excuse me, we have a.
Just a reminder, your meeting, in case you don't remember, the next one isn't until.
The 10th? No.
Of October, it's like this.
10th of October.
10.
Correct. Thank you. It's just a reminder that our next meeting is October 10th. But we do have a motion. We do have a second to move this forward, so I will call for a vote on that. All those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? 1. Thank you very much. Moving now to award a 5-year solid waste and recycling pickup contract as recommended by the Finance Committee. This is 23-109. This, Mr. Manager, I may ask you to jump in a little bit on this, because I know that we put out an RFP, as we do, for a 5-year contract to various waste management type companies, garbage haulers, collectors in the region. We had 2 companies come back to us with their quotes. One was Casella and one was Waste Management. In reviewing those quotes, Casella had the more, I guess, fiscally attractive bid for the town. And so what this is going to mean is that effectively starting in, was it July 1st of next year?
Correct.
We will be moving away from the,
Oh, wait,
oh, please.
1 year for the automated.
One-
Automated takes place in year 2.
Automated takes place in year 2.
Right.
So what I'm being told and what I understand is that neither of these companies are willing to do the grab and you go and you physically haul it and you put the trash can on the back of the truck and you physically load it up there. People power, lawsuits, liability. Many of these companies are just moving away from that to an automated system where the trash pickup companies provide you as a resident with one 64-gallon trash container and one 64-gallon recycling container. So every resident that participates in that will get that, and that will then be automated. So that will be rolled out just to the street like you normally do. The truck will come by, it will automatically load them and throw them over the top. That raises this issue, however, that because it is automated, no one is there to physically check whether you used your green bag or not, or whether it was a clink bag, or whether it was just some other type of green bag that you may have just found. And so because that visual check is no longer going to be there, this is effectively going to replace, once it's implemented in year 2, replace the green pay-as-you-use trash bags that we are all now required to use. So that is a wonderful thing, I think, for many of us, because I run out of them frequently. When I'm going grocery shopping, I forget to purchase them, and then I end up having trash kind of pile up in my garage for some time. I'm also understanding that neither of these companies, unfortunately, bid on the bulky item pickup, which is something I love dearly. My family does twice a year to be able to get those things out of your house. Unfortunately, neither company that participated in the RFP bid on that work. And it strikes me as that's something that's going the wayside as well. So on the one hand, we have the benefit of getting rid of the green trash bags, but on the other hand, we will be losing bulky item pickup week. I believe we have 2 left, one next month, October 9th, the week of October 9th, and then we will have one again in May of 2024. So keep that in mind. With that background, I guess I'll open it up to the council here to see if you have discussion points.
I thought Casella bid on bulky waste.
They bid an alternative that basically provided the roll-off containers. They will not go curbside collection.
Gotcha.
So can you clarify that for me one more time? Because you said next year we will go to the automated system.
Sometime between 24 and 25, the automated truck will be here. It requires a brand-new truck to be dedicated to the town that's used 5 days a week in Cumberland.
Okay.
So that truck has the automation and everything else on it, and that's the delay. So their bid was about $1 million cheaper than Waste Management's over the 5-year contract, so it's a substantial difference in price. Neither company would bid on our bulky waste pickup. They said it's too much of a liability for them. It's a workers' comp nightmare, and it's essentially trash week for many people that just clear out everything. It's really gotten worse than just bulky items. So they both said they can't do it, and they don't wish to bid on it or will participate in that, other than providing us as many 30-yard roll-offs as we want to bring and then stage it somewhere if we'd like to do that. I would recommend highly against that. It just becomes a nightmare for us, and it becomes effectively a mini transfer station for about a month, so.
Right, which we do not have, but I also think you brought up, Councilor Filson, some interesting points about there is Riverside as a potential facility, and then you brought up something else recently.
There's Riverside, and we have a very large barn, and unfortunately, we have 2 children who acquire a lot of toys, and our barn has filled up too quickly. But there's this incredible service, a vendor called 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I don't know if anyone has leveraged them before, but they will typically bring their massive truck right to your house and load up all of your junk for a price. And so one of the things that we were just kind of batting around is, maybe there are some vendors who might be willing to prioritize the town of Cumberland for a couple of weeks and, go and collect. It would be, of course, something that residents would pay for, but maybe they'd give us a discount. There's Riverside. Maybe booster clubs could get involved with, maybe the boys lacrosse team or girls lacrosse team wants to come and haul, furniture. I think there's definitely an opportunity to brainstorm and bring some creative solutions to the table. In the meantime, from my perspective anyway, not having to get the bags is a great thing. I frequently forget to buy them. And I think there's also really no way to enforce it, even if we were to kind of continue on with the bags, right, Bill? I mean, it would totally be on the honor system, and that isn't very equitable, I don't think. So.
Yes. So again, please.
One of the things we talked about a long time ago, Ron was probably the only one here, is we have a lot of private roads where people bring their trash to the end of the road, mine being a classic example. And I'm sure for another 10 years or so, Bob will be fine lifting those big things into his truck and bringing them up the driveway. But what happens when I'm 90, my mother's age, I hope to be someday, and I can't get those things up my driveway? I'm not the only person, and we have dozens, if not scores, of private roads that are like that. And that was a deterrent for us when we first talked about making this changeover.
A lot of roads in our community have given waivers to our trash haulers over the years to drive down them. So they basically say, you take the responsibility for any damage to your road that our trucks will cause, and we will come to your house. Waste Management had the same contracts. Casella, this is the second time they're back to our community. They have the same concerns. They will go neighborhood to neighborhood and basically see where their trucks will struggle, and they will basically require waivers from those private roads. If people choose not to do that, then they would have to bring it to the end, to the main road, and have the trash picked up there. There is an opportunity for smaller containers, and that would be kind of on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
We do have seniors and senior neighborhoods that will never generate enough to fill up one of those big containers, and we've talked to them about that as well. But that is on a case-by-case basis. They're also, which some of us will think is great, some of us not so great. They also will have an app that you immediately can contact them if there are issues with your trash or recycling, and is an instant response from their call center. So I think there'll be a lot quicker response to complaints than in the past, having to call
Okay.
town hall and having to get somebody here. They also offered, both companies offered a very positive program where they wanted to keep the carts, maintain the carts, and be responsible for the carts. So unlike Falmouth, Wyndham, and North Yarmouth, they bought the carts and basically are going to maintain them, which we just don't have the staff to do that. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that works out for those guys. I hope it works out okay, but I'm excited that Casella will take on that maintenance. Same thing through the app or through the phone. You call them, have an issue, and they are going to be responsive to each resident.
It's a good question,
I
though.
have another
No, that's
question.
great. I think that's a great question because it. Go
So
ahead.
in the contract, I can't pull it up because my computer died, but there's also included some dumpsters.
Right.
And some of those dumpsters, it's clear where they are, like rec or whatever. But there are, go back up, because it's right here. There's a 10-yard trash and a 10-yard, is it recycle? REC means
Yep.
recycle.
Yep.
Where will those be?
There are two here at Town Hall. There are some at the fire stations,
Yep.
both fire stations, Valhalla, Twin Brook, basically all the town facilities.
We've got Public
Town
Works,
garage, yep.
Parks, Fire Department.
Yep.
Is that LB?
Yeah.
Library.
Library.
And then there's a 4-yard trash, an 8-yard recycle, 8-yard trash, 10-yard recycle, and 10-yard trash. Can people use those other than, like, if my container was full?
Some people do call, typically those who have lobster bakes on a weekend, they want to get rid of shells and stuff. That's the typical call we get because of the odors. But on a case-by-case basis, possibly. Used to be when the bags were subsidizing the program, it mattered if the bags go away. And that's kind of another discussion that we really have to kind of wrestle with, because I can't turn off the switch immediately. I have 8 months of bags that we have in the queue right now to get us through this year. And then over the budget cycle, you're going to have to decide what you want to do with the elimination, fading out, or just, go cold turkey, July 1st, it's done. And the trade-off for losing the bulky waste will be losing the bags. And those are discussions that Finance Committee and the council will have to go through during the budget process, because it's about a $350,000 revenue that we'll end up losing that has been subsidizing basically our trash.
Are those larger containers emptied every week?
It depends if you bring them to the curb.
No, the ones that we have.
Oh, we do, yes,
For
every
the
week.
town.
Yes, every week.
The 10-yard ones and I have one more question.
Please, those are great.
What's the impact, because there's going to be an increase in cost to the town, what's the impact on the mill rate going to be?
Nothing this year, because we've already paid for this contract. I haven't estimated what that would be over, in Casella's case, it's probably going to be neutral for next year. But going further, I'd be happy to get you those numbers. but-
Because we'll not have revenue from the bags, not that that covers the cost.
Yeah,
but-
that's almost 30 cents. Yeah, that's 25, probably closer to 25 cents. That's real, and we'll have to look for revenues elsewhere. And at this point, I'm not prepared to answer that, to say where that would come from, but It's about 25% change, 25 cents in.
Not on the
revenue
mill
savings.
rate.
Yeah.
Yes?
It's 300,000, over 300,000, so 20 cents. 300,000 over 1.5 million is, yeah, that's what it would come out to be, about 20 cents.
What is it? So that's in addition to what we pay for solid waste now?
For the loss of that single revenue, that would account for a loss of 20 cents on the mill rate. We would have to increase the mill rate by 20 cents if we didn't offset that with other revenues somehow.
Okay.
Right. And again, the budget is gonna, it's hard to calculate what that exact number is gonna be because we don't know in terms of what the future budgets are gonna look like in terms of increased revenue in one area versus.
But we have a fixed cost for the contract, so we
Correct.
have a general idea.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
And the
and-
loss of that bag revenue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So just for full public disclosure here, if folks didn't see this, these are public responses. The two bids, one from Casella was about $3.1 million, and the bid from Waste Management was $4.5 million
Over 5 years.
over a 5-year period. So obviously, we went with a more competitive bid there. Looks like you've done some math.
It's a difference, if you wanted to tell.
$1.3 million between the
That's
two
the
bids there.
difference between the
Yep.
two.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
It's almost $1 on the mill rate.
Exactly.
Shirley, would you support keeping the bag fees?
What?
Would you support keeping the pay-as-you-throw?
Don't know yet, and I probably won't be on the council then.
Well, but it is something we need to discuss because there's
It's a
maybe
part
different
of it, yeah.
avenues we can figure out to do that.
It
But
seems
it's,
a little redundant. That's a lot of plastic for
Correct.
no particular reason. I mean, the environmentalist in me is,
so a lot to talk about there. But we do need trash picked up, and we did go out to the market, and these are the two big players that came back. It looks like we have a question here. Please, go ahead.
A couple of questions based on Counselor King, and then to address Counselor Filson. There's another company, The Dump Guy. We use them
yeah.
quite often.
Cool.
And they're awesome. When you go automated, you only have the driver in the chart, correct? I would assume?
Yes.
What happens when you go automated, something happens and the trash falls and the driver just keeps going and nobody's home to pick it up. And then it just blows everywhere because it's a really windy day. And it's on somebody's lawn, it's on this guy's lawn and this guy's lawn, and
I would say that would probably be dealt with through dealing with Waste Management, or no, excuse me, with Casella
Casella.
directly. And
have you
saying,
dealt with
hey,
a corporate company
every day, usually.
who challenge to get employees who are going with artificial intelligence where you get a little bop. I'm just trying to think of seniors, right? You know, a little bot pops up and, hi, I'm Jenny, and you respond to it. I did it the other day, and it's like, oh my God, no, I'm sorry, I'm artificial intelligence Jenny, I don't understand your question, and
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you're raising a bigger macro concern about as things automate and as artificial intelligence and machine learning take over more things, it's gonna disrupt markets and it's gonna disrupt the way we interface with companies.
I'm just thinking of the seniors in our community.
Of course, but right now, we don't, the alternative would be we stick with what we have, which neither of these companies have agreed to do. And so we're at a point where we don't have another option.
Those are the only two companies
These
that
are
do
the
this
only two
industry?
companies that have responded to the RFP, that's
That's
correct.
respond to the RFP, but are there any other companies in the state that do this and offer this service in this area?
You might be able to
We have
answer that.
reached out to 4 different companies to participate in this RFP, and only 2 responded. Casella and Waste Management are really the 2 largest players in the solid waste industry. Casella being the biggest in Maine and possibly our New England area, but Waste Management probably the biggest in the world. So, but Waste Management doesn't have a very strong foothold in the residential trash collection in Maine. So I see the market getting less and less competitive, and that's what alarms me more than anything else. And I'm hoping that over time, some of the New Hampshire and Massachusetts companies will come up here, because right now, just about every one of our neighbors and everyone in southern Maine is basically with Casella by competitive bids, but very few companies are bidding anymore on residential collection. They're
So to
dealing with
that
commercial.
exact point, is there a way to change our bid maybe, which could attract somebody, change our RFP, which would maybe attract another player?
Yes, and that would require kind of where Bob Vale has been pounding the drum on regionalizing. So we would have to erase the town lines and basically say, all of us towns, and we tried to lead this argument last year in preparation of this bid, will go out together, and we know what we've got 25 years of history with our EcoMaine, so we know what our tons are.
Right.
So if we basically went out with one vendor and said, these 30,000 residents of this area, this geographical area, will go out in one bid, we would probably draw some of the vendors from Massachusetts and New Hampshire up to participate.
Right.
That'll take a lot of will of multiple councils to basically trust each other to say, okay, you're gonna be 30%, we're gonna be 40%, you're closer to the incinerator, so you should be buffered. It's all of those arguments, Scott, that have 3 times now have killed that regional collection process. And unfortunately, I think it's gonna be a tough battle, because people want to know that that's Wyndham trash, or that's Falmouth trash, or that's Cumberland trash, and why are they mixing them up? But regionalizing is the only way we're gonna basically save money for our residents in the future. And I'm not very hopeful right now, as of today, that that's gonna be successful, as we've tried on 3 occasions to make that happen unsuccessfully. We've always been the last one standing.
And when you said earlier about Casella, or whoever you decide to go with, being responsible to repair the cans?
That's correct.
Okay, so can breaks, whatever, you have, the end user has to contact them to come out, repair it, replace it, whatever the case may be.
Right, and that's one of the things they're giving us. They're giving us an app. They're contacting all the residents. They're trying to get people signed up for the app so that they can respond directly to you. And if you are not capable of doing that, you can always call their number or call here at Town Hall. And we've been assisting people for decades with solid waste issues.
So we'll continue to do that from a town hall perspective for those that may be technically challenged.
Absolutely, always have, always will.
I said that appropriately.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of people in the same boat that don't know how to use an app, or don't understand how it's used, or can't get to it, so.
Can't get through on the 800 number.
Right, exactly. We have a person designated to the town of Cumberland. That is our primary contact person. We have cell phone numbers, all that stuff, and we can get a hold of them. They're typically very responsive, and it's worked out well. I know people have had bad experiences. I mean, the experiences you shared are accurate, and that will happen, but we're in hopes it'll be the exception and not the rule, so.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any more discussion from council, public? Seeing none, I would call for a motion.
I move to award a 5-year solid waste and recycling pickup contract to Casella as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
One abstention, I work for them daily, so.
Okay, we have 1 abstention. Counselor Kopp. All others were in favor. Okay, moving to the last item on the agenda, 23-110, to set a public hearing date of October 10th to consider and act on setting sewer user fees for fiscal year 2024. Mr. Manager, this is, I don't want to steal any thunder from the presentation of the details on the 10th, but it's my understanding that the Falmouth sewer facility is a facility that wastewater facility that we own 30% of. And there are some very large capital improvement projects going on there over the next 5 years. And as a result, those come with costs. And we will be responsible for our ownership portion of those costs, which is that 30% number. We have some funds, sewer reserve funds set aside, I believe about $500,000 set aside for large increases or issues if something breaks, that we're trying to use to potentially buffer that increase in cost over the next 5 years to bring that number down as best we can. But this is an enterprise fund, which I think you point out quite frequently. So just so folks know, this is not funded through general property taxes. This is not funded through the mill rate. It is funded solely by users that use the sewer facility. So we will be talking about this issue on the 10th. The town manager, I believe, will be going into some greater detail about what those numbers are, what the increases are, what they relate to, and how it might affect users moving forward. on the 10th. So today on the agenda is really just to set the public hearing date for the 10th to discuss this topic. Does anyone have we have a question from the audience here?
Am I allowed to make any comments at this point or ask any questions?
Yes, sir, you are.
Again, Bob Knopp, Hawks Ridge. First of all, the manager sent out something in the mail yesterday, and I thought it was a pretty good analysis. But Bill, what is an HCF?
100 cubic feet,
Thank you.
the measurement of the volume of water.
For us of those who don't attend your meetings on a regular basis, when you use an acronym, it sometimes puzzles us. So I still don't know what a TIF is either. What is that?
Tax increment financing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple questions that I hope will be considered when we get there. Is there an intermunicipal agreement between the two municipalities?
There is.
There is? Okay. And can I receive a copy of that between now and the time I can go to?
I think so. I think so.
Okay, I'd like to look at it. By way of background, and I don't mean to drag this on, I was counsel to a sewer authority in central Pennsylvania that had 50,000 users in our, what we call a township. And we had an intermunicipal agreement with two other municipalities. The one municipality had the sewer treatment facility, and we had, let's say, fractious discussions frequently about things such as infiltration and inflow issues. And I bring that to your attention just simply because I know how sometimes these things work or don't work. So I understand the legal basis for the increase would be found in the intermunicipal agreement, the cost sharing you spoke about.
There's two agreements. One agreement is with the Portland Water District, who maintains our system. They get paid a fee for that. So that plus the capital improvements to our own municipal system inside the boundaries of Cumberland is one set of increases. The second set of increases is at the Falmouth Treatment Plant, which we are a 30% owner of. So, yeah, they're two separate agreements that I can get to you.
And I think the last meeting that I viewed on television was one where some discussion took place here at council about the two big improvement projects that sort of generated this increase. I hope that when we get to the 10th, maybe some of us will be able to understand what those were. And you know, the question, I guess, is what input do we get here in Cumberland with respect to those improvement projects before they are actually contracted out? Do we share information? Do we get a chance to say yay, nay, or can you go out for another bid, or do the engineers get together? I don't have any idea how that process works, and it is unusual because what I understand is that we went like 10 years without an increase, and apparently because there were no project improvements. So my whole question will be later, what led to this and why were these two things suddenly foisted upon us? I mean, all users, not just Cumberland.
Sure.
So I'd like to know that. And last, I've just looked at this today, Bill, and it looks like while we're talking about two things, we're talking about a projected increase of 10%
For this year.
for this year, and then another increase of 12% for the next year.
That's correct.
So a total of 22% in rates over 2 years. And that's pocket change considering the things that we're talking about here tonight. But for senior citizens, it's not pocket change. It's people who are on fixed incomes who are paying these user fees.
Yep.
And so I have that interest, and I thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. And I would appreciate any comments given your background as counsel to the sewer district on those agreements.
I will look at them, and I'll be prepared to talk about them if you want to hear me.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none. Do we have a motion to set this as the 10th?
Mr. Chair, I move to set a public hearing date of October 10th to consider an act on setting a sewer user fee for FY 2024.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion on setting that date? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. We will now move into new business. I will start with my esteemed colleague to my left, Councilor Kopp.
My good friend Dean has donated $20 to the 4-H food auction.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. So if anybody wants to bid against the town manager or myself, be there. It is a worthy cause. I'll donate my $20. The only other thing I have is there is a new grand marshal for the fair this year.
Too late, you missed it.
Bill Shane was nominated to be grand marshal of the fair. Congratulations, Bill.
Ron, I got to just jump in there. What the best thing they did for me is they had the New England Little League champions right behind us. So everybody that was cheering, I felt like I was important for a second. And then my wife pointed out, they're cheering for them, you knuckleheads, so sit down.
That's great.
So they were awesome. The kids were great. They were just huge celebrities at the fair yesterday. So it was awesome. It was awesome to see them because I watched the games on TV on ESPN like
so
most
did
of
I.
us did. So it was
Yeah.
very exciting.
It
Great
was.
kids, great kids.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Vail.
I actually have a couple of things here this evening. Shirley, I'd like the ordinance committee to get together and we can work on the conflict of interest
what?
policy. A new conflict of interest policy.
Okay.
I had a meeting this morning with a woman who is running a new maintenance assistance program, and she was kind of wanted to know what we were doing and how we were doing it as far as housing initiatives in our community. And anyways, I had an opportunity to share with her some of the things that we were doing and our RFP that's going out and how it was being structured. And she said one of the things that you should be patting yourselves on the back is that you as a council are actually moving this initiative forward, and most communities don't have that leadership capacity. They're not taking the initiative to. So anyway, she applauded us on our efforts and was very intrigued and wanted to know how she could be involved with it too. And then one of the other things that I had come to my mind is when the Finance Committee met the other day, we were talking about some of the programs, but one of the things that we are doing is we're using more electricity. We're converting, school buses. There is actually a garbage truck that's powered by electricity. We don't have any in the state of Maine yet, but they are out there. And so I think that we as a council should be proactive. We should take a good look at our solar field and examine the capacity for adding to that and seeing what those what the possibilities are. We're not going to be using any less electricity, and as a responsible user and as we convert police cars, pickup trucks, our town fleet, we're using heat pumps more, we're reducing our reliance on fuels. It's prudent for us, I believe, to take a look at our solar farm, see what the capacity is to increase that, and get a working plan ahead for us. And then I guess I can't help but feel that we heard a lot of comments this evening about our schools and perhaps what our roles as a council may have in that. It certainly is it's been a topic of discussion in my own home. I actually have a copy of that book that has been talked about so much of late. I've read the whole thing. I am reminded of an old proverb that says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Actually, it's not a proverb, it's a quotation from the Bible. And so I think that, you know, the responsibility of all of us, whether it's education, public policy, housing, we all have to draw the line in our own lives and say, what do we stand for? What is acceptable? Where is the fight? And how am I going to engage myself in a responsible way as a citizen of this community, of a citizen of a global community? And so I believe the opportunities are there for us to act responsibly in a lot of these different areas. So the best way that I can effectuate change is to make sure that when I go into a voting booth and I cast a ballot, that I have examined the people that are running for election, or whether it's a referendum on Pine Tree Power, something like that. The exercise in the ballot booth is the most important thing as we as citizens can do. And I'm certainly going to use that as my barometer, my compass. And that's all I got.
Thank you. Counselor Filson.
Can't top that, so I'm just gonna move it on down. Nothing from me tonight.
Counselor Douglas.
Just a reminder, the Cumberland Fair is going on this week. That's all.
what?
Cumberland Fair.
Oh.
That's all.
I have a
Troy King.
I have a couple of things. Good luck tomorrow on in the auction. I hope there aren't too many people there betting against you so that you can get more for your money. We were notified, and I'm going to try to go. I have to let Fran Prentice know that the Maine Supreme Court will be operating at the PAC this week, and our own Steve Moriarty will be the attorney representing cases there. So I think that would be fun. I think the last time I saw the Maine Supreme Court in action was in 8th grade in a field trip with Mr. Wiles. So I'm going to try to go to that, and I think that'll be fun. I want to send out condolences to the Wyatt family. Mrs. Wyatt passed away just after, or just actually before our last meeting, but I hadn't heard that she had passed away at that point. And I just sort of wanted to weigh in on what Bob was saying, you know, about our decision-making. You know, I'm really glad I'm not on the school board on this one, because I am absolutely not in favor of banning books. On the other hand, I'm an educator, and I'm in favor of having developmentally appropriate materials for students. And the book in discussion, I've looked it up, and the author does say it's for an 18-year-old and older audience, or an adult audience. Common Sense Media, who's an organization that I use to sort of as a clearinghouse for some of the materials I used in class, and some of the materials we use district-wide, puts a 16-year-old age limit on it. I don't know, we all have our personal opinions. It's not for me to stand up here and say one way or the other, so I'm glad I don't have to. But, you know, I kind of go back to the word common sense, where are we with common sense? And I think it's a discussion that may be moving toward the public library sector at some point, you know, because we had a library meeting this week, and sort of when we move to Minerva, there will be like new cards for people to check out particular books, and for some children to check out particular books, they'll need parental waivers for those things, which I think probably is a step in the right direction. But in a school, and it may have been that only seven people checked it out, how many kids looked at it in the library without checking it out because they didn't want to check it out or were embarrassed? And I don't know. It's so complicated. But I have conservative leanings, so I would that's where I'd go. I just wanted to go on record as someone who's not, I don't want to be silent on this, because I'm not for banning books, but I'm also for developmentally appropriate material for kids in school.
I know this is new business now, and so public discussion has effectively ended, but I could see that there was a question in the audience asking what Minerva is. Would
I'm
you
done,
mind just, would you mind updating just very briefly what Minerva is?
Oh, Minerva is the new library checkout system that we're working towards. It's going to be a while. All the books in our current collection will need to have barcodes assigned to them. All the patrons will need to get new library cards. You'll actually have to have your library card with you to check out books. But it opens up all of a whole network of public libraries. So if our library doesn't have a particular book that you want, you can get it within days from another library. If you were on vacation up in Damariscotta, for example, and Skinfoma is a part of the network, you could go there and use your Minerva card and check out a book on vacation. So you came to mind when I thought of that, because a friend of mine used to be the librarian there. So,
Well, thank you very much. So just a couple very brief things here. First off, we talked about the trash contract and bulky item pickup week ending. So just a reminder for folks that you do have bulky item pickup week, the week of October 9th. So don't forget that and be prepared. I think they will probably be coming around the days that they're normally scheduled to hit your street. But if your street is anything even remotely similar to mine, many people from around the region drive through with pickup trucks and take things oftentimes before the trash haulers can even pick them up. Another thing before the town council meeting tonight, I want to thank Shirley Story King for meeting with me and a resident who comes to our meetings frequently, raises questions, raises concerns. I want to thank that individual. Bruce Sherwin had come to us this evening to talk with us about a lot of the different issues on our agenda. And I really appreciated that meeting. We sat together for an hour and talked and got to know each other a little bit better, and also just to be able to spend some time explaining and discussing the things that are before the council. So I want to thank Councilor Story King for sitting in that meeting with me, as well as Mr. Bruce Sherwin. And then finally, Mr. Managers, just to make sure this got through, Joyce Bond wrote in an email and we've offered to add that to the public docket for the meeting tonight. So believe we have one more question. Yes, sir.
Shredding Day,
Oh. Also, it's been reminded to me, thank you very much, Confidential Shredding Day has been, it's a week from Saturday on October 7th. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate that, Bob.
Where does that take place?
It's,
Drown Road at the Public Works facility.
thank you. Drown Road at the Public Works Facility. With that, I would happily accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, I can see Shirley's hand rising already. Unanimous. Thank you, everyone.